first time the website was shared, Trifos had to pay it with a credit card. And they came back the next month looking for credit card payments, and Trifos said, aunties, go and ask, I don't know if there's somebody else. But again, when we look for spaces, I opened my home. When we look for gifts, we went to Madam Press. We said, Madam Press, we showed her gifts. She said, go to Flower Box and get gifts. Go and see who else can sponsor you. But we didn't allow those small little things to hold us back. Again, I think when you look at how we showed up, and we were so proud because when we looked for the next generation, the next year after we launched, Buhle Babene was president of AWCA, and she was promoted as president, and so we allowed her to move forward together with Pula Mlope, who was vice president of African Women's Chartered Accountants Association. They then moved on to bigger and better things. And Boliswa Madikizela was actually appointed as IWS fellow, as one of the YLC members. So actually we've got 3 of the YLC people who are fellows. So we have Ati, we have our very own Lucy, but we also have Boliswa Madikizela. So 3 guys that we actually produced. So again, don't be jealous, applaud for ladies. I think those are the things that YLC showcases rebirth, and once they moved on, we looked back at the generation who we were actually, between Trifos and I, holding hands with. And when we said we need new leadership, Trifos was very, very bold in terms of saying, come and step in as the next chair. You are our co-chair because we need to now start handing over to the next generation. And Trifos held my hand and she led me through. And Mamputi as well. Mamputi again allowed us that space. And then we had the likes of Ati who raised their hand. Again, my mentor, Zinhle Romano, raised their hand. We started producing magazines, even, under the leadership, what was our young lady's name, the editor? Kutwano. Kutwano was the one who led boldly in terms of magazines. We had monthly newsletters, again, showcasing ourselves. Please sign up. But Karen Matiko, who now is actually promoted, she's doing amazing work. But so many people kept raising their hands, saying, sign me up. So again, I think even just this leadership summit, it's recognition that people are doing a great job. The first time online and tried, the systems collapsed. We kept having people saying we can't sign on, what's happening? But we moved ahead. That was our first online summit. The second summit last year was a remarkable one. Actually called it the Year of the Tiger. And again, we had some phenomenal global speakers. Again, we're putting in global speakers to come and speak. And we had a full house, as we did today. We had a full house of speakers who came to support us. We had our inaugural summit last year. We had our inaugural preaching competition, again, led by Zinhle Romano, in terms of trying to figure out how we stand forward. We do know half of what we're doing. But here we are today in this beautiful venue, proudly sponsored by Standard Bank. And then it can only grow bigger and better from here on. So those are just some of the highlights, just in terms of how we're seeing that we are paying for and we haven't stepped back. And again, as you rightly mentioned, Lorato, when it came time for us to also step back and hand over the baton, Try and I am very bold. We stepped back and we said, we're now ready to hand over, and you and Zico raised your hands and we said, take it over. Again, you guys are not wallflowers. You raised your hands, and others may say, oh, why, why Ati? Why is it, why you guys are maybe favoring Mutati? Why is it that it's time and time again, every time we would pulling in X, Y, and Z? That's because you guys raise your hands. So my only takeaway for everyone in the audience is if there's something that you guys feel that you want to do, raise your hands. Just raise your hands. We don't have to come and maybe we know what you do. Another, I think, in terms of the powerful thing you all do, all the full-time jobs, you're all very senior in your roles, you're all very powerful, you're all very important, but you raise your hands and you do this pro bono. You don't get money, you don't get payback, you pay your own petrol, you drive wherever you go, you have to pay for it. So again, keep raising your hands. Maziza as well, raise her hand. She came in and she said, I want to pay it forward. We've had lots of meltdowns, we've had lots of things between her and it, but you guys raise your hands. So just keep raising your hands and paying it forward, and the future is looking very bright for all of them. Madam Chair, and I really love what you've just done here, really calling out with intentionality the people who have been behind actually the realization of the YLC vision, and really the people who made it so easy for me and Nosy to pick up the stick and run with it. So we're really grateful. I think we should give it up for the founding members and committee who actually are the reason we can be able to continue even to this day. So I've been told that this was put specifically for me because they said Gail on time. So Madam President, Madam Chair, the purpose of this conversation is really for us to give to the people the proof in the pudding. So let us talk about it. Does mentorship and development work? And please really share with our audience some of the real life experiences as you've seen the play out, Madam President. You've mentioned as well that that is even what you are pushing with the Facet Women's Legacy Program. So please tell us how you've seen this come to life as a catalyst.
Just being here today and having you interview these people. Because, you know, when you, and this is why I say, in fact, I just want to acknowledge we've got all our members here, Mbali, Anna Mokoko, Miki, Totsi, Peta, Butle, Pauline, Dr. Namonde. I can't see too far, eh? I'm still young, but I can't see because it's dark at the back. But just to acknowledge that these are the people who are young. Remember in 2020, you had the chair of YLC, Trifosa and Charmaine. Who do we have now? They are not there. They've got Nozipo and they've got you as co-chairs. You have got many of the YLC people, the confidence. I mean, these are people you like, oh my goodness, they are just moving ahead. Boniswa, one YLC, she's on the fellowship program about 2 years ago. Yeah. This year, and I want to mention, this is very important, Nozipo and Ati have been selected on this program too. To get onto that program is not easy. Yeah. You're competing with global people across the world. Yeah. These are the people you compete with. I mean, these are like the top of the cream de la cream. Yeah. And to go to Harvard and INSEAD, I mean, that's not child's play. Yeah. This course, it costs you R1 million, trust me. To go onto the flights, the course itself, the accommodation, all of those issues. You have at least R1 million. So for the two people to get onto that course is so amazing. And they are from the YLC. They're from nowhere else. And they've been mentored by IWF. And that for me is so significant. All the women, I mean, we've got, you guys have also gone on to the legacy program, the structured program, and what you've achieved, the entrepreneurs, the conversations that you have monthly or quarterly now, that you have with IWFSA members or people associated with our members. You have conversations. And everybody that I know want to be part of YLC, they say, where do we ever apply? We want to be those leaders. So you are the leaders. You are testament to what IWF has achieved. I mean, when they talk YLC in IWFSA, everyone is so proud to say, oh my goodness, these are, remember you have the energy. Some of the others they've achieved this, so that's a bit older. At least you guys are younger, you're achieving at a younger age, which is fantastic. So, I mean, you, the women in this room, gone through YLC, are testament to mentorship being being promoted. You've advanced your career. You are networking with one another. You are supporting one another. Your network is actually your net worth as well. The way you operate, and that is why it's something that cannot just be left at this. Like we said, when we talk about 1,000 women, the movement of people who are going to bring about a movement of ethical women leaders, who are going to bring about positive change, both in politics and business in our country and on the continent. That for me is ultimately what you are doing. We want to see you there, and that for me is what is driving us and make us very happy.
You know, I just want to mention, I think Karabo Motswang tried, you remember when we had a call out for SABC board members, you were the one who insisted we put in YLC members. She was nominated off the back of a motivation from YLC. Congratulations, 200 male guardian nominees. My mentee was selected, Zita Romano, as well as Jeff. She was also one of the 200 out of 4,000 applicants. Again, YLC guys, you know, also if I look at Tando Daza, Tando actually got myself and Madam Chair on the Power FM takeover. We were there for 3 hours as DJs. That was all thanks to Tando. So again, it shows you that you are paying for these things are working, guys. Working.
I just wanted to say again, and sorry I have to keep referring to you. You see, all of these leaders are also your potential and your customers.
Yeah.
You are the ones who are also going to fund their businesses, etc. So by sponsoring them, I'm talking the 3 years, not today. Thank you for today. And for the 3 years, you are basically creating a huge opportunity for your bank as well. Because so that they are number one rather than all the other banks which you want to mention.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Madam Chair, Madam President. Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard, there is proof. We are the living proof. As a cohort 1 mentee, for me to be sitting here in my capacity as co-chair, we can see there is a pipeline. You've heard, a lot of examples have also been shared. And thank you, Madam Press, for the advocacy and agency. I think today we will have a sponsorship.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so very much, ladies and gentlemen. As we take some pictures, can we please just give Lerato, Madam President, and Mrs. H a really Now, ladies and gentlemen, as I introduce our next video, so we're going to turn our focus to a video now before we get to our next panel. And this video really builds on the conversation that we've just heard. We've talked about a whole committee that's working alongside Lerato and I. This video is going to introduce you to the committee and especially just give you a little bit of a taste of the kind of work that is happening in those committees. Let's be reminded that everybody at YLC shows up in the spirit of volunteerism. Everybody's got a full-time job, but more importantly, everybody's got their sleeves rolled up, contributing and paying it forward one way or the other. Please turn to this short video as we talk to you about our strategy and the activities that sit behind those things.
One video. Thanks, James.
I am Lerato Pilane, co-chairperson of Young Leaders Connect Ideal.
And I'm Nozipho Shabalala, co-chairperson of Young Leaders Connect Ideal.
Our Vision 2025 is themed Empowering the Future, and we certainly do remain steadfast in our commitment to develop the pipeline for the next generation of ethical women leaders. And I mean, this is clearly evidenced by the work that we have been doing through the various pillars within YLC.
Absolutely, and you might be asking yourself the question, why a pipeline of ethical women leaders? If we take a look at our world, our continent, and certainly even in instances of our country, what we do know is that there's a huge gap for ethical leadership. What we do know is that we need more women in leadership. This year and the coming years, all the way up into 2025, is going to be about being intentional about building that pipeline. And our core focus is around mentorship. And the vision here is that we have mentored at least 400 young women by 2025. You'll hear from the pillar heads talking a little bit about some of their own highlights in this journey.
Recognize that at times it's not actually possible to have those one-on-one mentorship interventions. And so as part of us enabling the capability of having group mentorship sessions, we've enabled thought leadership conversations. We actually bring in leaders in business who share on topical issues.
Today our theme is #Embracing Equity.
My name is Nozinzo Sombesi. I am the co-lead for Board Leadership. Our aim of the pillar is to bridge the gender gap on boards. How are we going to achieve this? To position and empower 20 women through board leadership training, networking, and leadership opportunities by 2025.
Hi, my name is Mutati Solelo, and I'm the lead for the Ideal Communications pillar. The objective of my pillar in enabling Vision 2025 is to continue to be the voice of YLC members. We do this through our monthly newsletters and our quarterly magazines, which we hope you've been involved in. We also continue to engage with our members through various social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. We are so excited to be part of this astounding vision, and we look forward to engaging with you and celebrating all your successes.
My name is Wasizana Bito, and I'm a member of the Ideal Book Club. Our vision for our Ideal Book Club is to empower and inspire a next generation of young women to read. We hope to learn, connect, and engage with people from different perspectives as we invite different authors who inspire us as we unpack life and leadership.
My name is Maxine Koipo. I am one of the co-heads of YLC Conversation. The vision for our pillar is really to have authentic, building conversations that affect and impact positively every facet of a woman's life.
Tobile Novo, I am the co-lead for the student chapter pillar at YLC. So with the student chapter, we want to replicate the same model of mentorship that we have been using at YLC. Currently, we have one student chapter with the University of Johannesburg. Hi, I'm Nonkululeko Radise, the co-head of the entrepreneurship. Our aim at YLC is to develop an integrated resource management strategy, which will develop a holistic and multi-dimensional approach to problems, to the entrepreneurs and their business to provide an effective coordination between mentors and entrepreneurs in related institutions. This will help entrepreneurs to simplify their administration as well as to develop their business in a more faster and efficient way.
Hi, my name is Chandra Das. I'm the co-lead for the YLC Mentorship Program. The objective of our pillar for the Vision of 2025 is to provide mentorship and strategic support to 400 young women that want to become future fit and ethical leaders in their respective fields by 2025. We believe in this initiative and we continue to support and build those women.
My name is Lapeng Malidima, and I head up stakeholder engagements for YLC Ideal. My job is to make sure that we have collaborations with stakeholders who have a common goal, which talks to the importance of governance and how we hold ourselves in high regard as YLC Ideal when it comes to ethics and governance. Also, it's important that we have sustainable relationships with our stakeholders because these are people who enable us to run YLC and be able to successfully complete some of the tasks that we've set out for ourselves throughout the year.
This year's theme is very well thought out and very intentional. We are embracing equity.
Great job coming to
Ladies and gentlemen, those are the ladies that are behind the scenes, showing up in every single way, every day, making sure that YLC Ideal is more than just a good idea, but actually really has impact. And we're now ready for our second panel discussion for this morning. I'm going to introduce our moderator. She's standing by. On a personal note, she's mentored me as well. And so I count her as amongst many of my mentors. She's the CEO of Business Engage, which has been an organization that's also taken on YLC members to give them a board training, and so we're very appreciative of that. But perhaps in the context of today's conversation, she is a woman who has become a leading figure in gender mainstreaming. And what I mean by this is that she's done incredible work in terms of getting the private sector to really buy into meaningful representation of women. She is going to be leading a conversation now focused on more than a seat at the table. What does it really mean when we have women leading boards? Please put your hands together for Colleen Larson.
Thanks, Nazifa. Wonderful to be as a member of IWSSA. I mean, just watching that video now and all those ladies and the ladies that have participated on the board masterclass series that we run,
You got any more lights?
I think the future is very bright. And I just want to applaud each and every single one of you for the work that you're doing. So on our panel today, I'm joined by two formidable women. Ms. Delia Ndlovu, she's the chairman of Deloitte. And Delia has enjoyed a remarkable career with Deloitte. In 2010, she relocated to the UK where she joined Deloitte UK GES team, where she gained valuable experience providing solutions to multinationals, managing large mobility programs, and supported the UK firm's Africa Desk initiatives. In 2013, Delia returned home to South Africa. Thank you for coming home, Delia. Delia has occupied numerous leadership roles over a tenure, and in 2021 assumed the position of chairperson of the board. Can we give a hand of applause to Delia? My other panelist is Tabi Nkosi. Tabi, are you here? Hi, Tabi. Thanks for joining us, Tabi. So Tabi is an experienced non-executive director and agricultural economist with over 15 years experience in agribusiness finance and operations, and agricultural policy making and strategy. She is the founding partner of African Green Alpha, a South African food and agribusiness investment vehicle. She's the chairman of the Montero Foundation, also serves as chairperson of the investment committee of the National Empowerment Fund. Please give it up for Tabi. So, this topic of conversation today is very close, more than a seat at the table. And I think it's very important that we recognize that it's not just the numbers that we're chasing. Simply reaching a certain number does not mean that we can guarantee gender diversity and effective governance. It goes far deeper than that. When we look at trends from the UK to actually benchmark some of the work that we're doing. And in 2011, the UK government established a commission under Lord Davies, which put a bold target in place of 25% women on boards. That was achieved within a 5-year period and overachieved. We then had the Hampton-Alexander Review that came in and turned their focus from the FTSE 100 companies to the FTSE 350 companies, and extended those aspirations to encompass women's representation in executive leadership roles and board memberships. What was very important to note is that it was not just the numbers. We then saw as a result of this that in 2011, we moved to a point where there were no all-male boards, which is something that I think we need to look at. And there were only 15 on the FTSE 250. So turning my question, maybe Delia, if I can turn the question to you first. When we look at well-formulated policy, the question has to be asked, do we as a society ever review and evaluate the policies that we are bound to? The Employment Equity Act has been around for 25 years, and if we look at that, we should be 50-50 decision-making structures. The JSE listing requirement to have a board gender policy is 5 years old. Do you believe that policies get reviewed for effectiveness?
Before I answer you, I just can't resist. I have to give a shout out to my mentor,
Hold cameras.
Futi, my client, challenging, and the reason I'm doing that is for effect, just to say I'm here because of these people. If it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be here. So thank you very much for indulging me. But just getting back to what you asked me, do we ever review the policy? So if we take the Employment Equity Act, for example, the Department of Labor themselves did a survey that effectively says the answer is we are not very good at doing the reviews, and they did this, you said it's been in place for quite some time, right? And it was only early this year that they came to the conclusion that only 1% of the companies comply. And I think part of the problem there is that, from the public sector space perspective, is that they don't have an enforcement capacity and the ability to actually do what they need to do. And the JSE, on the other hand, they seem to be successful. And I would hazard a guess, or at least just drawing from my own experience, say that it's because a woman is in charge there, right? And she's driving this change. And that's what we see at Deloitte, that in the surveys that we do, it's often that when a woman is in charge, you start to see intentionality around women empowerment. So I'll give you an example. When Wade, for example, started as the chair of Deloitte, and then moved on to be on EXCO. EXCO was 80%, EXCO of Deloitte, was 80% women represented, and then she moved it to 42%. Okay, that's not the boss, that's an executive. I came on into her shoes, we moved the dial from where she had left it at 42%, having taken it from 38%, she got it to 42%, we moved it to 60%. And then people started trying hard to say, but hasn't that pendulum swung too much to the other end? And to Futi's point, when men are 100% on the boards, no one ever complains. So it's okay. We're okay with that. It will come back into the balance at some point. But let me use it there to give my colleague an opportunity to add her perspectives.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks, Corina. Good morning to everyone. So energizing to be with such amazing women. And thank you to Mamtrai and the leadership of YLC for invitation. I think on this point of policy, any well-meaning policy has its shortcomings. And to be fair, I think the employment equity legislation that we have in this country has been effective, particularly, within middle to lower management levels of organizations. I think where the struggle has been is really within the upper echelons, within companies. And the reality is that there really is no legislation in the country that really dictates composition of boards. So, unlike in other countries like France, for instance, where there is legislation and there are directives from government perspective around board composition, we don't have that. We also see that the JSE listing requirements are almost viewed as discretionary. So where companies don't comply with the listing requirements, there are very few consequences. And so I think the policy perhaps that we need to be looking at, it really needs to be targeted at the highest levels of leadership of the organization. Because we see that very generic gender policies are ineffective because they really just don't get to that very top level.
And just to add on to that, for me, it's a good start to have the policies.
Sorry, gents, just keep working on solving this. Thank you.
Isn't it? To start with setting your targets, even at the micro level in companies. You have to be clear about what the targets are, what the policy is. So that's compliance, it's not commitment. But to get to your commitment place, you need effective leadership, inclusive leadership, to move the line.
So I think the take out with that is really the fact that we are having the conversations, we've had the ongoing conversations, but I think the thing taking it forward, we have to now be deliberate with the actions that we take and really hold the leadership to account in terms of those steps that we're going to take. So it's got to be consistent, deliberate work in the right direction in order for us to get to where we want to go, in order for us to see the results. So we mentioned about the JSE listing requirements that came into place in 2017, and it really is a move to make the representation of boards a lot more transparent and what's happening in there. But as you said, there isn't that microcosm of detail that we are actually looking for. Deloitte published some time back, and paraphrased a little bit, they did a research report that said that it takes any company about 5 years for change to be felt within an organization when we're looking at legislation. So when we look at the Business Engage research recently, after 5 years of the JSE listing, we are seeing the appointment of more CFOs, financial directors, women that are now heading up audit and risk committees, and that. Do we believe that move from a JSE listing requirement has had the effect that we're looking for? And should we perhaps now be turning the focus not only from the listed companies, but to the non-listed companies? And whether it's either mandatory or voluntary, but to make that same effect happen.
Okay, so I think there's, this issue around mandatory requirements for board composition is an interesting one, and I think there's certainly pros to it, where, in Europe, for instance, there are mandatory requirements around women composition. But in South Africa, we've had experience, with quotas in a number of different sectors, and they're not well received, right? There are arguments around being unconstitutional, etc. So the move is really around getting people to have voluntary commitments towards transformation and diversity in boards, and really reporting it publicly in their integrated reports, and being able to be held accountable by investors and the public at large. So I think a more voluntary approach is probably a little bit more effective because quotas can be circumvented. But interestingly, what I've seen is that whereas in the past, we used to see listed companies really take the forefront when it comes to transformation, what we've seen in recent years is, the SOE space, where I serve as the chair. There were, a number of years ago, there was a commitment that the boards of state-run companies would have a minimum of 30% women representation. And currently we're sitting well over that number. And so this voluntary number, particularly in the SOC space, has worked, right? And so a similar approach could be taken perhaps in the listed companies where there are voluntary commitments and people feel that there is a compelling argument and are able to put an argument forward around the commercial benefits of transformation. And maybe perhaps some incentives. I think that's a much better approach than inequality can,
Look, I think you said most of it, but I think where we've seen sort of mandatory requirements outside of listed companies in other countries, it has actually been very effective. If you look at some of the evidence-based surveys, it's proving to be effective. But for me, the bigger question is, once we've done that and the women are around the table, what do we do with them? Do we then have leaders that make sure that people are invited to the party, and when they're at the party, they dance? In other words, the synchronicity between diversity and inclusion really is important. Once you've got, the framework of regulation in place to get you started, and then it's up to those that are around the table, it's up to the chairs that are leading to then be intentional and deliberate about making sure that your voice is heard once you're around that table, because that's, so representation does matter, but without participation, it is useless. Why do we?
It's quite interesting. So one of the previous EU commissioners said she loves quotas for what they do, but quotas on their own is not enough. So it does get us on that journey, but then what you do, and I think that's why this is so special, this whole IWFSA movement, because essentially we have got so many members that are rallying around to ensure that those that are coming on behind us are able to dance at the table. So it's not just about the positions that we take, but how do we create that outline? And so I think that leads me to my next point, and maybe Didi, if I can start with you. So we've heard about opportunities that are going to become available. We've heard about people being able to put up their hands and say, I want that position. But if you're looking to take advantage as a young person, take advantage of those opportunities that are going to become available, how can those young people that are in this audience take advantage of those opportunities? And what do they need to cultivate? What attributes do they need to cultivate in order to take advantage?
Thank you.
I think it's an important question in that, and I think this audience here gets it, because a lot has been said about mentorship. It's amplified here, and it's, the videos we saw we're speaking and alluding to this fact. So for me, it's about mentorship. I benefited from that. I mean, Fuji still mentors me to this day. I still cry at all. Coaching is important. Sponsorship above all. Someone that, when you are in that, not in that room, in certain important forums, they speak for you. They say, what about hair? What about party? What about what about Tandega, and so on, right? Even if you haven't got a track record, they're able to say that she's got potential, right? But yeah, so an allyship from men is absolutely critical. I'm a product of people like Basinai, the late Basinai Desiso. I'm a product of Wazipam at Deloitte. I'm a product of Fuji fighting in rooms that I couldn't be in at Deloitte, to say that, to a point where she became popular, saying, but you've got to do it. The late Bonga was really brilliant at doing this. He was our CEO elect who passed with COVID, regrettably. But I'm essentially saying, for me, there's a content mix to have a mentorship, coaching, sponsorship, and allyship from the men. Men who are inclusive leaders, who have commitment, are courageous, and also culturally and intelligent, who are aware of their unconscious bias, right? Let me give my colleague a chance to jump in.
Goodness me, I think you said it all, really. And I think what you said is so important around mentorship and sponsorship, because ultimately, the traditional way for board recruiting is normally through personal networks. It's people vouching for one another and people referring one another. So it's so important that you are able to have people that are able to advocate for you, people are able to point out areas for development, etc. And I think maybe just in adding to what you said, what I find is that I think as women we can be quite poor about what we want, right? And Charmaine, you said it so nicely about putting your hand up. So what I've often found is, particularly someone like me who's relatively young and an opportunity comes along, and it's often overwhelming. And I think as women we're like, oh no, I'm along, and it's often overwhelming. And I think as women we're like, oh.
Yeah, I mean, you're so spot on around the fact that often the difference between us and men is just being given that opportunity. it's so true. And just around the issue of making sure that you speak up. I know that, throughout my career, for example, I missed out on so many opportunities because I came from Soweto, the dusty streets of Soweto. And like thinking modesty is a virtue. And I need virtue speak for myself. And that kind of thing, that actually one of my mentors saying, listen, stop it. It is not gonna help you, just put up your interviews. This is so. But just to the women in the group, and I think you're already doing it, just from my experience and being exposed to some of you, is that I read a book called Arrive and Thrive. It was written by one of our chairs across the Deloitte network from the US, who also, in fact, did what I said, that her board is 50% women represented. She wrote a book called Arrive and Thrive, and talking about how important it is to have that bold vision for yourself as a starting point. Where do I want to be, so that we go seeking that attitude and then have that courage, the resilience to just go for it. And then in any space, show up authentically as yourself. No apologies. Just be who you are.
If I can just add to some of that conversation that we've been having, I think it's also so important that we as women tell stories about other women that are succeeding. Because I think all too often we talk about the lack of role models and that type of thing, and yet there are so many dozen stories of women that are achieving. So it really comes down to us as individuals to make sure that we challenge those conversations about what women are achieving, and really look at mentors at every single level of the organization. Because kind of, as you said, you looked at it and said, well, can I achieve that? And I think the reason is because we always profile mentors that are senior. There's somebody coming in, we need to do that mentorship at every level so that it inspires the younger generation to say, you might not be there yet, but you can get there if I can get to the next level. So when we look at, for instance, role models, I mentioned role models, and essentially it is the conversation we have around the lack of role models. Is that a true statement? Because I don't know, I look at what women and men have achieved, and I see dozen role models. But if we speak about the power of role models, how can we influence companies to adopt role models to ensure that we have a move in the right direction of more opportunity for women to get onto boards?
So, do you want to start? So the statement around we don't have enough role models, that's not my lived experience. But I guess if you look at how we've moved from the communities at the societal level, for example, I've moved out of Soweto to wherever I live now. So what about that girl at the corner in Soweto? She's lacking that role model. And that then says someone like myself has to be very intentional about leading from a purpose standpoint, in that I have to use purpose as a moral compass to guide whatever I do to engage with societal impact stuff. Very important. So I think if I hold that as a North Star in everything that I do, to often think, okay, so we're making an impact here at Deloitte, we're also thinking about what about society? So looking at, from an ESG perspective, the companies that we go to projects with smaller businesses, setting them up in such a way that they also succeed in their own right. You know, I'm thinking of Ernestine that we work with, Tamani, all women-led businesses that at the board level, we're able to say in our ESG program, are we making sure that whoever we deal with is successful? And seeking those people out as chair and also as board members to ensure that those people are well looked after, as fairness and equity in our system to make them successful.
Yeah, I would agree that there's certainly no shortage of great role models. I mean, we are amazing women doing great work across a number of different companies, on boards, etc. But also, I think it's, you know, when you talk about role models, even if you are looking, for instance, certain boards, your pool for inspiration needs to be quite broad, right? Because, you know, when you are looking at doing this type of work, you're drawing not just on what you learned from a corporate perspective, but you're also learning from women in general leadership spaces. You're learning from women who are leading communities, because these are all skills that you need to bring to the table, just given the vast range of issues that we deal with in boardrooms. So I certainly think there's no shortage, especially if we really broaden our horizons and really look at, you know, women in a whole lot of different spaces that are just doing amazing work.
So it is down to purpose, and I think each and every single one of us needs to understand that it's not just our journey, but the purpose that we are looking to create and this new pipeline. We're coming to the end of our panel, so I just also say that it's also important to safeguard against what it's Alice's point earlier, that we shouldn't have a small pool of women that spread the love, you know, and pay it forward, which is what's happening here. To me, that is just so critical. That it's not always the same faces. I remember I had a chapter 0 meeting where we were putting the board together and we were mentioning that, you know, same culprit. And we turned around and said, but surely you could go look for a younger woman, you know, that can come and shake things up in this board. And I don't know why are you mentioning people you see all the time in all the boards. You know, just be creative and innovative.
Interestingly, I mean, in the examples that I said in Europe where they have been quotas and, you know, and women on boards and it's a large proportion, it's gotten to the point where it's the same small group of women and they now call them the golden skirts in France because it's the same women over and over. And I think it's so important for us to even get diversity within our own cohorts as women. So we're not there yet.
And it is about that diversity, it's not just about the numbers, it's how we're going to do what we have to do and do it effectively. And so I think it is incumbent on each and every single one of us to actually go and spread the opportunity, to bring in more people, to grow this network, because that is how we make positive change. You know. So, Delia, just to you, just in closing, just some of your closing remarks in terms of really challenging the young women in this room. If you were to put that challenge to them in terms of what are the steps you want them to see them do, what would your challenge be to the young women in this audience to take advantage of those opportunities? So, I mean, for me, they're already doing it, right? So I commend them for being in this room for starters. It is all about a state of mind, you know, for me, that mental attitude of I am enough, right? As women, we often make this mistake of waiting until we are perfect. But our male counterparts, they jump in. Even if they are 40%, they'll figure it out once they're in the job. But my encouragement to you is, often you've got it, believe it, and get in there, your mentors, your coaches, sponsors, they will put cotton wool around you. They will not let you fail. And also hold them accountable, hold yourself accountable, deliver on the promises you've made to yourself to begin with. Take personal accountability, leadership of self, and then, you know, go seek the help that you need. I mean, even at this level, as Deloitte's chair, I am still seeking counsel from all my many mentors. So yeah, I would encourage you to start with the belief that I am enough. Yeah.
If I would say one thing is perhaps, it's really challenged our notions around, what a normal career trajectory looks like. I often hear a lot of young women saying, well, you're not ready for a board. That is like something you do at the sunset of your career. And the reality is we need more young non-executive directors. We need young women in the room. And women really need to be quite bold and avail themselves because, the single playing point has a big impact around representation. If we don't put our hands up, we end up with the picture that we currently see at the moment. So I'd say really challenge those notions and really think about what it is that you want long term but don't constrain yourselves thinking, oh, when I'm 50, will I now understand what it takes to do that job because it's a big, big need for young women in the room.
And this is the last challenge from me. Essentially, when you're looking at growing your career and getting onto board positions, I think you'll have to stretch yourself because we always go back to our comfort position of where we're good at it. But you'll have to stretch yourself. So when you do stretch yourself, you're going to go through challenges. You are going to face failures, but don't look at yourself as a failure. Look at it as a stepping stone to where you are going to achieve.
Sorry for the silence.
I think you can do better than that. Let's give it a Thank you so much, Colleen. Commitment over compliance, incentives over quotas. I am enough. I am ready. It's been a really excellent conversation looking at the possibilities of what happens when women have more than just a seat on boards and they assume a leadership position. I'm really excited now to welcome our next speaker because she's really going to speak to us around the idea of walking the talk and the idea of formulating policies that allow us to really reimagine the societies we find ourselves in. Let's be reminded that how we formulate policy is a reflection of the society we aspire to have. The institutions that we decide to plant within our societies are a reflection of the societies that we are trying to build. And so in this talk, she's going to be helping us to stress test whether our policies as a country reflect our aspirations as women. I'm not going to introduce her in a long way, other than to say that she, in addition to being the visionary behind YLC Ideal, is a leader in public and private sector. We know her across industries. If it's aviation, she's there. If it's manufacturing, she's there. If it's construction, she's there. But more than that, she doesn't shy away from a challenge. And that's why we see her even today sitting on the ESCOM board, the PIC board, of course, the Solidarity Fund board, and even the IWFSA board. Let's put our hands together for Professor
Good morning. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's exciting.
We come to one, let's refrain to on one.
Oh, it's so beautiful, the energy in this room. Madam President, good morning. Did you envision this?
On two, thank you, great job too.
This is beautiful. I don't know what to say. I'm excited. And it was not the intention for me to speak. But when a speaker drops off, I always step in. So to make it look seamless. So I'm a woman, a phenomenal woman. Yes. By the late Maya Angelou. Good morning, the coaches, Nozipho and Nonatu.
Madam President, Ellen Chandy,
Coming
my
from
partner in crime communities, Mafuti, to the IWSA members who are here, YLC committee members, speakers, guests, Standard Bank. Good morning. I have been given a topic here, but I looked at it because it was not supposed to be me speaking. I'll do my best on the topic, but I'm going to talk from my heart and my experiences. Gender equality, we have come a long way, moving in the right directions, but the wheels are not turning fast enough. We are becoming impatient. Have you ever seen a child becoming impatient? They scream, they do all sorts of things. I think we are becoming impatient. We need action. We will continue with the rhetorics, but let's act. And to make sure that we do it. I was listening to Colin, employment equity, and we do have the policies that are effective to a certain extent. But I think we need to move beyond that. And that's what I'm talking about, action. And one of the things that I'm going to share, when I was the president of APSI, when we tell this joke, but there was a year I was the president of 2 organizations, but I was getting out of the other one and in the new one. Then we were dealing with some challenge because it was an issue of food. And we went to a meeting. And so I come in, and this gentleman that tells me in English says, Travis, you're president of 2 organizations, so we don't have talent in this country. That means you'll always go to one person. I said, wait for me when I go to the room, my vote is going to be like this. And my vote was like that. So we don't want to come up with a stereotype saying we don't have enough. They're not there. They're in this room, they're all over, they're on live stream, and the ladies. So leaders don't become great because of their power, but because of their ability to empower others. That's John Maxwell. So this quote resonates very well with me because I have learned through my leadership journey that empowering others gives you greater joy, gives you fulfillment, gives you impact. That creates an opportunity for collaboration and also for those being empowered to be creative and innovative. It also builds confidence and trust to those around you. You saw that video. It's curated by the young leaders and edited by my daughter. And I'm very proud of that. And she taught me, so I now I'm digitalized. I'm improved. So earlier on in my career, when you talk about intentional pipeline, intentional leadership, and working based on these policies that are there, I was at the Red Nation Bank Asset Management, 1997. There were very few women, or very few black people, who were in the financial services industry in terms of investments. Actually, when I got in there as an investment professional, I was the only black person to be an analyst in the portfolio management. And that time I said to them, guys, I can't be the only one. We need to have more. They said we can't find them. I said, but now if you give me budget, I will find them. And there was this leader, I think he's retired now. I think his name is Jan. He says, okay, Sharifa, that's fine. how much do you want? I said, 1 million. And I was given a budget of 1 million. And while I was doing my job as a portfolio manager or an analyst, I had 1 million to run a program of investment professional. I created an Institute of Investment Excellence, and I managed to get about 6 young ladies, very smart, to go to investment industry. And as I'm talking today, some are still in the industry, some are overseas, and some stayed there for more than 10 years and became the best portfolio managers in the property side. And that was the intentional side. And I was still in my 20s, I think. And when I was at AWCA as a president, I was very clear that if we are going to be intentional, we have to put it in the policies. And we didn't have a seat on the board of SAICA. And I went to the CEO, I said, you wanted a seat? He says, no, you've got it. And went to the board, we said, AWCA needs to have a seat at SAICA. And then they created a seat. Even today, AWCA has a seat. So they don't have to apply, be interviewed and rejected or accepted. They have a seat that is allocated to AWCA at SAICA. That is intentional. And then we became intentional to say we need to put more women on boards, but we have to capacitate them. We have to make them ready so that they can learn and understand what is it like and act in an ethical manner. And I remember at some stage we were looking at newspaper adverts, trying to nominate each one and nominate each other. And then at the APSI, when I was the president with the APSI Women in Finance, I heard colleagues talking about 2017, the JSE listing requirement. We went to see Nikki, who was the CEO of the JSE. And I said, guys, if you really want the JSE to be transformed, you have to look at the listing requirements. And it must be there because companies are forced to comply to the listing requirements. And then when we met Nikki, she was great at the time. We said, Shakosa, you know, it's a JME. Let's try and put it from a voluntary point of view and comply or explain, and then we'll take it from there. And I'm happy. It is in the listing requirement. It was the APSI that went there and confronted Nikki to say we can put it in the listing requirement. And she told us how to do it, and we put it in there. And when I joined PPC, we created a women's forum. And as we put in the women's forum, it was the only woman in the expo, and it's male dominated. And it helped because we had support. And then when we were investing in the rest of the continent, we said we need to deploy women. And I'm happy that we managed to deploy one of our own at Rwanda, which was a $600 million plant. And she made it work. Her name is Lucy, and is a member of IWC. And it worked. And in Rwanda, then we started making sure that we have more women on the board. And then again, now with IWSA, Madam President spoke about it. When we say we want to develop the next generation of leaders, then we started the YLC. And in doing the YLC, then we said, now we need to have programs through the leadership committee. And I remember we had to ask Ushibra to assist, and all the business schools to say how to create that program. And the school came in and said, because Madam President just said, I give you the platform, go look for money. And then we said, where are we going to get this money? The school came and said, Facet, and we engaged Facet, we followed the process. I remember the first one, we made a mistake in the documents, we missed it, and we had to do it again. I think we decided at 11:59 before the closure of the tender. And today we're in partnership with Facet, who's supporting 1,000 women. And I'm very proud. They said there was an ESCOM, and they also launched a women leadership program. And we have 55 women on the ESCOM, and then their target is to have 50-50 by 2035. And at the PIC, I got my chair to give me permission to talk about it, and then I am talking about it because he was supposed to be the one speaking today. When we arrived, we started talking about the transformation charter, etc. Remember, Mamfuti, since Barbara were running around in there. And then eventually they approved the transformation charter, which says 50-50. And the board supported us. Obviously, sometimes, management will say, oh, it can't be done, it can't be difficult. But we put the target to say 50-50. In terms of our investments, in terms of boards, in terms of EXCO or these listed entities, and it's on the website. If you believe, go to Google, you'll find it. And also now, the nice thing is that we are launching a women's fund. And the women's fund was advertised over the weekend. And that women's fund is by the PIC in the asset management industry. That's it. So yesterday I was at the investment committee, they were giving me feedback, and I said, but no, don't give me those excuses. We have a chapter, it's approved, comply. And when we are placing people on boards, it's intentional to the committee to say 50-50. Don't give us the male names, 50-50, go look for them. And then we've joined the 2 times challenge, and we committed $150 million in the rest of Africa investment for women investments. So Tandy was saying to me, she was next to me, she says, Travis, you are living your purpose. And I said, yes, I think I am. But the minute you start saying you are living your purpose, I start talking about David and Moses. Looks like I'm in your pocket. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think what I wanted to say is that when you live your purpose and you are intentional and you are surrounded by women who empower you, you are surrounded by those who believe in you, it gives you, it gives you wings. When you see me, then so you must know what I've got the women surrounding me. So know that the women are surrounding me. And then when I make mistakes, I'm going to learn at least be calm. I said, okay, I'll be calm. Because we all learn. And we are in the University of Life Learning. And that is why when you are on a lift as you rise, when you get there at the top, don't forget to send the elevator down so that the others can also press as long as there's power. Thank you very much, ladies.
Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for Mama Just 2 things that I want to highlight. Check your power and to what extent is it translating into empowerment of others. The second, of course, is send that elevator down. Allow others to take the lift up for as long as there's power, she said. One more thing.
This spring day, and then Nolundi from Nolundi Events has bought all of us roses.
And on the note of roses, because we're going to take a bio break now, we're actually going to be able to get our roses, so we're going to get our ashes to please the sisters. But for now, we're going to take a bio break. When we come back, we have an incredible speaker. In fact, when I first listened to her leading and co-chairing Women's Economic Assembly, I sat back and I said, when I grow up, I want to be like Sis Namhla. She is going to be talking to us about red corner, and the extent to which it is a blueprint and an example of how do we create equity by looking at public and private sector supply chains, and how do we become more intentional about using those supply chains to advance the empowerment of women. We're going to take a 15-minute break. It's 10 past now. I'm going to ask us to be back in the room at 20 past. No, my math is out. Let me do it at 1/2 Let's be back in the room at 1/2. Madame Namsha is standing by. We don't want to miss the next conversation. Please don't forget #YLC Ideal, #Embracing Equity. Let's tweet, let's take pictures, let's amplify the conversation. If you're online, please hydrate, take a leg stretch. We'll see you at 10:30.
Gentlemen, we are clear. Let's cut cameras. We gaan ruk. Go ruk.
When you do get a chance, is it possible to send me a piece of like just a snippet of the screen?
Cool. Sure.
Just
No
a piece, because I'm using this automatic.
clean, yeah. What happens here is going to take.
Because I'm using that automatic mic mixing.
No, dude, it's brilliant.
Let's leave it and just as it's
Zero issues. Couldn't tell the difference between a Jono mix and this. Honestly, it's great.
it's a weight off on my. See, I came to take nuts and bolts from consumer goods.
No problem.
Last session.
Last session.
Yes, that's the one we've been working on. Yeah.
Right, good. So we have another 15 minutes left. We're in catering.
Oh, is that what was happening?
No, I was just setting up the desk and getting signal to the LED so that the actually carry on.
Yeah. Good news is there's definitely no streaming tonight, but still streaming.
So that makes no sense.
I know. But instead of running an SDI, just have room to convert it. I guess we're going to do that. We're just going to stream it. Oh, well, they're running late.
No. They're actually.
No, I mean now. I mean with this now.
I think what we'll do is we'll wait until we get to the 45 minutes. We got a 50. Yeah, we're gonna go into that one.
Yeah.
15 and then we got 45. Like you. 2 sugars. If it's hot chocolate, 2 sugars. I'm not here, you can't see me. I'm undercover.
Yeah, undercover. We have a video, and it's fine. So where's the Bluetooth?
Yeah, now I switched off for the show.
Okay.
There.
So we just drag and drop.
Yeah, they're not quicker.
Okay, so there is a one complication on it, right? We didn't have that one. I've spoken to Paul. He said he's going to help us.
So they can just play some.
Yeah, so it's the literally video. I will cue this she's wearing a white shirt and then just play something soft on the road.
Some elevator music.
Yeah.
Like all 5 minutes of the panels, yeah. Channels.
Yeah, we're doing well, but I just was caught up, but I don't think we're gonna do because people only. That one's speaking first. This one's fine. That's 15 minutes. Give me that. And then the
That you already took down.
no, it was the one. This one is from the side. And then we're gonna give. I want to. I really want to.
Okay, so what we'll do is we'll play it by ear so that we can see what happens.
Sorry, can I get your number? Then I can just text you.
Yeah, not a problem.
Yes, miss? Yes, please. Please, thank you. Are you on?
Yeah.
I mean, 0 it's on my notes. Okay, I'll send you a WhatsApp.
Not a problem.
Not a chance. Apparently it is.
Yeah, so which is 35 minutes. And the last year. I think try and get that coffee as soon as you go into the session.
Yeah. Once it boots up, go for a walk. Yeah. That, while your head is on your shoulders, that first video that opened the whole show, can you intro? Because I cut in too late, and I'll pop that in the edit. Or you can send me all 3 videos, whatever, but it's just the first one I need.
Full MacBook Pro.
Shot. Boom. Check how fast it is next to each other. Instant. Yeah. Instant. No radio interference. Okay.
There's a studio between us and the monitor.
So true. Come on, need 2 more minutes. Dump this file.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be starting again. people back in the room. And of course, if you're in the room, if I can kindly request you to please quickly take your seats. Our next panel is standing by, and we want to make sure that we don't lose time on our program. Thank you so much. I'll be back on stage in 2 minutes.
Yeah. Gents, with your cameras.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for honoring the time, attention. Thank you so much for indulging me. I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much for honoring the time of the break. I hope you have had an opportunity to hydrate. I also want to say a big thank you to everyone who's been pulled aside for interviews. You've been indulging us and you are in front of the cameras, and we really do appreciate that as well. Now, as I said before we went to the break, we have a really exciting opportunity now, because I think it's important when we do have initiatives ahead of us that are really seeking to establish a new blueprint for what we're trying to achieve, that we take the time to pause and engage with that blueprint. And so today we're going to hear from the co-chair of the Women's Economic Assembly, which of course we know is a platform that was established by the president to try and look at the question of how do we get women businesses in supply chains, and with an ambitious target, I believe, of the percentage of business that must be reserved for women-owned businesses. And to speak to us, as I've said, is the Director General in the Office of the President, in her capacity as co-chair of WECONA. But more than anything, I have to say this. When I read Sis Namsha's bio, the thing that stands out for me, and I want to be able to say this myself in future, she is the woman who is advising the president, let me start there, on how he might do the job of implementing and executing against our regional, our national, and global commitments for gender equality. Let's give her a big round of applause.
On to.
What time is it? Good day, everybody.
On one. On one.
I am not going to speak on prayer. So I'm not going to be able to do that, but when I say hi, you'll say hi back to me. Good. So I really am delighted to be here. You know, like you come into rooms like this, and I know you might have heard this before, but like you come into your room like this and you're like, this is why we do what we do. And I know you have moments like that as well in your own leadership roles. But you know, we are contending for a nation. We're contending for a nation. We're contending for a fractured, broken society whose economy is dysfunctional. It's this and underutilizes what it has to spare, right? When we were faced, I'm like, if I don't greet properly, I should do protocol first. There are very important people in the room, and I really, all protocol observed, I'm just inspired by the room and the energy in the room. And so with all due honor and all due respect, thank you to the leadership of YLC Ideal. The work you do is exciting. I'm going to come back to that. Thank you to IWFSA that we've been working with for a very long time. My co-chair is Mafuti over there in the Women Economic Assembly. But let me go back to my topic and then I'll come back to do my due respect. So the problem we were contending with was an economy that wasn't growing in South Africa. We know the reason it wasn't growing, so I'm not going to give you an economic lecture. We know the legacy of the past. We know that when we had an opportunity to take over power, we didn't understand sufficiently some of the challenges that face ordinary South Africans. I'm going to give you just a little bit of a background about some of those challenges that we face in this country. Number one, I think it is an unspoken truth, but a very well-known one, that South Africans really don't own the South African economy. Now, I'm going to say some things here that normally a public sector person would not normally say because I'm adjacent to the public sector and not quite in the public sector as well. So most of our thriving companies in this country are primarily owned by international companies. Value chains for those companies, supply chains for those companies, leadership decisions for those companies are generally made outside of the country. The reason why the South African government decided that we needed a strong reindustrialization agenda and a strong localization agenda was because overall, out of the 17 industries, each and every single one of them, more or less, is dominated by 3 to 5 big international companies. What that means for a woman business owner is that there are pretty few opportunities to gain entry into those spaces. So once we have dealt with the legislation around representation, making sure that women are in leadership positions and making sure that we've got the policy and the legal frameworks to support that, we have to contend with the fact that we still don't have the ownership of the means of production in the country. Ownership of the means of production, as far as we are concerned in the Women Economic Assembly, have to do with the extent to which women own businesses in these sectors, but don't just own businesses, they also have opportunities in the supply and the value chains of those industries, right? So that we have market access and that the businesses are actually productive. So we have to be thinking about what is the legal framework that's necessary to ensure that we can talk about the shifting of power. Because you can't talk about equity and equality without talking about where does power currently reside and how do we ensure that we are shifting it effectively to where it needs to go. So the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence was on businesses and we have access to supply. That is why Cabinet approved the decision about 2 years ago to say 40% of preferential procurement will go to women. What does preferential procurement mean? It means that when the public sector is making a decision around its demand plan for a year, they must earmark a minimum of 40% towards businesses that are owned by women. A mammoth task, especially given the fact that globally, procurement decisions only really benefit 1% of women-owned businesses. In this country, when we started, it was just under 10%, and we're trying to increase it and bring it above to the point that we become 40%. So we started the Women Economic Assembly, not as the public sector, by the way, but as the women of South Africa. Because this was a private-public partnership where entrepreneurs came together, women business associations like IWFSA and a number of others like BWA came, and the public sector came to say, how do we begin to address this massive problem that we have? So then we put our hands together, and we put our heads together to think about what's the solution. The very first thing that we needed to decide was, what does a win look like for us? What does gender transformation in industry look like? We came up with a 6-point plan, indicators. Number one, the idea that women must own, but also must have access to supply chains in the industry. Number two, that ecosystems of support in the spaces where women operate must actually be conducive for women. Ecosystems of support mean that women have access to financing, women have access to capacity building, enterprise development, etc. And some of the challenges we began to unearth came from women entrepreneurs, as well as women in the corporate sector who are decision makers, who were saying, these are actually the limitations that we have in operating and ensuring that women have opportunities. There were a number of other things that were success indicators, such as localization, for instance. How do we make sure that as we are busy building industry in the cities and the metros, that women in rural areas are part of the discussion? Women in townships are part of the discussion. And that became also an important indicator. I think one of the game changers that we did in terms of making sure that we can practicalize this was to actually mature in our leadership. And some people already came with that maturity accomplished. I'm going to talk to you about my co-chair just now, because she was so instrumental in helping us to decide, how do we begin to engage with industry as we are trying to cause this change? Now, I'm in the public sector. I'm formerly from civil society, and I'm an advocate at heart. I've worked over 20 years activating policy changes across the continent and globally. So I know what it means to shout. I know what it means to force things. And when I had to understand the nuances and the complexities of global value chains in industry, one of the things we had to realize was leadership requires that we give up our egos so that we can co-create and find solutions with industry bodies that had the intentionality of wanting to ensure that they promote women, but didn't know how to do it. So our value proposition became, we've got a system of transformation, 6 indicators. We can help you design the programs, but what we need from you is political will. What we need from you is commitment. What we need from you is the investment in time and energy to make sure that this happens. A couple of really wonderful success stories began to emerge. In the automotive sector, and I use them as an example because we were in a Women in Auto conversation just yesterday with a massive association called the AITF, which is the Transformation Fund for the auto industry in South Africa. At the time when we began to have a conversation with them, they had just launched 6 billion for transformation in the automotive industry in South Africa. They had not thought about what their gender targets are going to be. They were thinking representation, let's make sure that women are in the representation and in the leadership. Let's make sure that our members, like BMW, Mercedes, have women in their boards. When we came as a value proposition and said, no, think supply chains. Yes, representation is critically important. But one of the things that you must add into the bouquet of transformation is to ensure that women are owners of car dealerships. Women are owners of component manufacturing plants. And so they actually agreed that 30% of that 6 billion would be earmarked for women. And as of yesterday, we were hearing that it wasn't just, it's not happening. Yesterday, we were hearing from the report that it wasn't just 30% that they've actually earmarked now. 60% overall of their spending to date actually has benefited women-owned enterprises directly. These are things that excite me because while I'm sitting in the private office of the president and we are thinking about legislation, we had to really be humble and say legislation itself doesn't cause transformation. You have to come together with well-intentioned and leaders with integrity that are willing to put the work and put the investment in causing the changes. That's why an entity like the Women Economic Assembly is so important, because it's an enabler and an activator for transformation. Because, ladies and gentlemen, When we talk equity and we talk equality, we're talking activation, right? We're talking, Meta was just saying that now that she's part of Wikona, she was saying that action actually determines our results. And the fact that we've been willing to go to every single industry, to the Sugar Association, to Agri-SA, to the industry in infrastructure, to industry in the built environment, etc., and begin these conversations with those industries to say, you need targets. Targets for leadership and representation, targets for employment parity and equality, but also targets for procurement, because we want women to own this industry. And part of our ecosystem for transformation is also thinking towards the future. What are the new businesses and new industries that are about to emerge in South Africa? So now we are no longer talking about the fourth industrial revolution, we're talking about the emerging of the fifth industrial revolution. We're talking AI technology, we're talking, all sorts of new industries that are beginning to emerge. And we're saying we have the opportunity to ensure that majority owners in those industries, are actually women. But that requires the typology of leaders that I see in the room, women in the corporate space, with the intelligence and the political will and the commitment to say, where I am, I'm going to be asking questions about who are we buying from? Why are we buying those people? Are our procurement officers and decision makers gender transformed? Have they gone through the sensitivity training that's necessary to ensure that in our procurement decisions there's equity? But also the women who, whether you're in corporate right now or whether you own your enterprise, eventually you are going to own a mega enterprise. I know this for a fact. Because it's necessary. We can't transform this nation without having more and more entrepreneurs. And so as you're thinking about your entrepreneurship journey, now you're going to be realizing that you are existing within a challenging ecosystem, but an ecosystem where it's possible to succeed. Before I run out of time, and I don't know how much time I have, so I'm going to just summarize maybe 3 or 4 points that are lessons for us in this equity journey. Number 1 is where I started from, that we are rebuilders, building fractured economies. That allows us to understand that it is not just about my personal success. It is not about my personal legacy. It's not even about my family necessarily, though those things are important. It's about the fact that in 20 years' time, I want to see a transformed economy. I want to see a thriving nation. I often say, and I know I've been heard saying this ad nauseum, that we don't talk about women being part of the economy as a nice to have, a tick in a box tick. We talk about it because it's a national imperative to ensure that the nation's best resources are leveraged and utilized and invested in so that we can actually have the South Africa we all hope for. But a fractured nation or a fractured economy is actually designed by fractured humans. I'm going to say something controversial. You can't have fractured systems without having fractured humans that designed those systems. So when you have YLC Ideal, and they're talking mentorship, and they're talking building women of integrity in leadership, they're talking about building individuals who are not fractured, individuals with coherent identities, individuals for whom justice underpins what they do, so that when you go out into the ecosystem of the marketplace, you are rebuilding an economy that's no longer fractured. You are rebuilding an economy that we will be proud to hand over to our children in the future. And that is why I love the work that YLC is doing, because it is so necessary that we produce the type of leadership that will actually produce an economy that's inclusive. Not because the inclusivity is the specific now, but because we want to see a better world. A second thing I want to mention as a lesson for equity is this thing around co-creation. Man, this has taught me many, many lessons. Co-chair Futhi here, who basically made the decision and convinced other business women that I should be the co-chair of Wikona. And I'll tell you a very, very important, very, very humble thing.
that I had no business being a co-chair of ECON. I'm fantastic in what I do. I am. But I didn't have any entitlement to begin to lead a process that would change a nation. I didn't. It was her who convinced her people that essentially they needed a co-chair that was younger and that would represent who I am. And as we have walked this journey together for 2.5 years now, she looks at me and she talks to me like I'm her equal, and I'm like, oh my God, I know you are. Like, I know you're just playing with me here. There's not a single moment where she's ever made me feel like I was less than. She defers to me all the time, and she deals with me as if I have the same incredible wisdom and experience that she has. So then, because she is who she is, you know, I'm a very spiritual person. And I understand that elevation is not about the person being elevated, it's about the person who's doing the elevating. And many people who are being mentored make the mistake of thinking that because you are elevated, now you are the equal. So every time I look at her and I talk about her, I say, my co-chair, Mefuti, because even though we're so close and I love her dearly, I will never make the mistake to imagine that I have the same wisdom she has. And it is that that maintains my integrity and ability to face the challenges we faced. Because I have an anchor that I can defer to, that I don't need to worry about. Do I trust her? Do I not trust her? Am I working with someone? Am I not working with someone? It doesn't matter. And she has schooled me in how industry works in ways that I have an MBA. The things I've learned under her, I did not learn my MBA. I did my MBA 10 years ago. The work you are doing here is absolutely critical to ensure that we eventually have the nation that we want to build. And I just want to congratulate every single one of you and say that the work of defracturing our society is a turnaround strategy, not for ourselves only as individuals, but because we are turning a nation around. And eventually, when we write the story of the Women Economic Assembly or your entity, what we'll say is how women came together to rebuild a nation.
Yo, sure. Ladies and gentlemen, let's I think you understand now, like I said, that when I grow up, I just want to be just like Sis Namhla. I'm not going to take out too much because I think a lot of what she's given us is feeding into our call to action, which we're going to make at the end of today. But I just want to lift two things. Legislation doesn't cause transformation. And I think that's such a powerful point. So that even as we interrogate our legislation and our policies, we don't make the mistake of removing our own agency in terms of activating that legislation and those policies to cause transformation. We cannot exclude ourselves from the equation. The second point is equity is about activation. It is our actions that determine our results. I just want to say thank you so much to Sis Namhla. I think she's done an incredible job of provoking us today and really dropping wisdom for us to reflect on. We're moving on now to our second last panel for the day. And this is a panel that is all about asking the question, what if we were able to accelerate equity by funding female founders? It's a mouthful, but it's intentionally a mouthful because it allows us to zoom into an area of possibility and to ask the difficult questions. Leading this panel and moderating it for us is one of our pillar heads. She looks after Ideal Conversations. She's the founder and CEO of Beta Sigma X, which is a tech startup which was rolled out of the University of Edinburgh. She's an actual specialist. Her passion lies in growing and investing in businesses. And as we heard earlier on today, She is one of the fellows of IWF for this year in terms of the fellowship program. Let's please put our hands together for Ati Gurku.
I guess I can also do my voice. Our sponsor has led the way. Thank you so much, Program Director. We're going to be discussing a very important topic. And this topic, when it comes to accelerating equity through funding female entrepreneurs, affects everyone. It affects businesses, it affects project owners, so it affects all of us in the room. So in this topic, we're saying, show us the money. We're saying, show us the money. And to help me unpack this very important conversation, welcome on stage Tepiso Kobile, who is the CEO of the South African Venture Capital and Private Equity Association. Welcome on stage. We also will be joined by Wanga Gudi, who's the Acting Chief Director of Liability Management at National Treasury. And then we will also be joined by Mojabeng Montata, who's the head of cities, water boards, and economic zones at the Development Bank of South Africa. And lastly, the thorn amongst the roses, and our first male speaker for the day, we've got Mr. Wasim Karim, who is the CEO of the Development. Thank you very much, and I'd like to invite everyone to take notes, because I will be allowing an opportunity for questions for this panel. So welcome, and I think I want to start with you, Tepiso. Can you please enlighten us on the work that SAFCA actually does, and can you please paint a picture of the funding landscape in South Africa?
Okay. Good afternoon,
Coming to
everybody.
on one.
I'm
Thank you.
delighted to be here today. I cannot imagine a better way of ushering in this season. So I'm so grateful that I'm able to share this platform with everybody, all the lovely ladies here today.
Okay, one is working, two if
I
you want to do something
represent
else.
SAFCA, and we are an industry body.
Yeah, give me paddle. Thanks.
We
That's
really
great.
represent private equity
Let's hold
and
these shots.
venture
Thanks, James.
capital fund managers. We've got just over 180 members, and collectively they manage over 200 billion worth of assets. And the reason I'm saying that is because we sort of give the landscape. But I'm starting off there because when we then talk about what we advocate for, it is really the private equity and venture capital fund managers. And the reason we advocate for fund managers specifically is because we are convinced that we cannot achieve the economic growth that we want as a country if we don't actually channel capital to fund managers. Because we see PE and VC fund managers as the most appropriate conduits for attracting capital at scale, because that's primarily where pension fund monies will go channeled through PE and VC fund managers. But importantly, we see those fund managers as the appropriate entities to drive change that we want to see at investment level, because they then attract that money at scale and they invest it into SMEs, into companies that need to grow, into companies that are driving innovation that we need as a country, and therefore employment.
Yeah, I think that's very important, and it's quite amazing to know that we actually have this climate here in South Africa. You know, in February this year, the Harvard Business Review stated that only 3% of venture capital actually went to female-owned businesses in a mature market like America. In South Africa, we also have young people and women-owned businesses struggling
to raise funding, whether it's from banks or VCs and other institutions. And also, I just want to highlight the fact that women account for more than 40% of South Africa's labor force, which means that in effect, they are big contributors when it capital contribution pension funds. Yet when it comes to the investment flow, we don't see that investment capital prioritizing women-owned businesses. And to this point, I actually want to bring all of you to just help us unpack what seems to be the stubborn challenges when it comes to funding female entrepreneurs. And I want to start with you, Mojabel. Thank you so much for the invitation to join this panel and to participate in today's event. So perhaps let me just set in context, the DBSA is a development and finance institution that is really owned by the South African government. Our core focus is to develop, finance, as well as implement projects across the continent. Wherein we have three key infrastructure classes that we focus on. The first is municipal finance, which is the team that I lead. The second is our economic infrastructure classes, and lastly, but not least, our social infrastructure, which is the foundation, to both the municipal as well as the economic infrastructure. So the DBSA has made significant strides in terms of gender mainstreaming. It has made significant strides in terms of financing not just SMEs, medium as well as large businesses, but also in deliberately focusing on the transformation agenda. So much as the previous speaker spoke about policy and regulation, the previous speaker spoke about policy and regulation not necessarily enabling the gender discussion. However, I have a slightly different view. I believe that SA has phenomenal policies, but we're very poor at implementation, and in particular, absorbing the concept of gender-led investing and the like into our institutions and changing. So as a financier, yes, women still struggle from various perspectives. It's a construct around women's abilities, women's biases against women and the like, and all of these feed through then into the ongoing challenges and the gap that we see between our genders. So particularly, as a financier, we're always asked, it's difficult to access capital when capital is expensive. We've also get questions and criticism as lenders around the requirement for collateral assets. So those are areas where the DBSA is particularly honing in, and as the panel continues, we will share work that the DBSA is doing to ensure that we create access for funding for female investors and entrepreneurs, as well as reducing the cost of funding. And a wider discussion around dialogue and changing perceptions around the capability of women and the risk attached to businesses that are led and operated by women.
That's a very, very important point. And I like the fact that you're talking about investing with a gender lens. And being very practical about it and very determined about it as well. And just now, Manga, if you could just share your thoughts on what are some of the challenges and the stumbling blocks when it comes to financing of women.
Maybe
before even getting is available. Government funds about 2 trillion rand of it. I believe that a certain percentage of that should be earmarked for women in business. If you're able to earmark 10, 20, 30% of that, you are directing close to 600 billion to women.
Yeah.
And this is funding that is available for education, for health, for infrastructure, for policing, for education. In 2019, government started rolling out a program called gender-based, it's a gender budget process, right? Where each department is requested or required that for all the programs that lie within departments, whether it's national or locally, that a certain portion of it should be directed to women in business. It hasn't gained that much traction as we would have loved for it to. And these type of policies, nothing I believe with even saying that it's good to have a policy, but if it's not implemented, it's as good as not having it. And so part of the work that National Treasury is currently doing is to roll that program.
Let me use that quickly.
And this will
Taking
definitely require a lot of political support, a lot of political will, support from management, senior management as well, to ensure that these programs are able to be rolled out, right? Some of the challenges, and I think the challenges that face women in business, I think, I would simplify them into three: access to information, to networks, to technology. And once you start speaking about them, you start actually seeing the divide. And that divide actually is more, you see it more in young, Black, and mostly female, where people don't even know where to start. My cousin in Venda, where I come from, probably doesn't even know where to get information to start a business. She's got this idea, but where does she start? Where does she source this information? Even with matches around financing, it also, women are great. They say she's able to get the information, but women are awesome, and she's able to get through that hurdle. The next hurdle is getting the financing, which also becomes a bit difficult. And lastly, access to the market. The market that we operate in is mainly dominated by like very few firms, and it becomes very difficult for a young woman in business to penetrate and enter that market. And so these are some of the challenges that we've seen, that we've observed, and I think that not only relies on government to address, but collectively, private sector, public sector, areas that I feel that we can collectively address. So, thanks.
Thanks so much for those insights, Manga. And I really like the point that you say that we need to be bold, and we have to ask government to give or to allocate a portion, of their spending towards women entrepreneurs. And Thabiso, as well from the VC and the private equity space, what are some of the challenges? 2-3% in America. Already imagine how much it is in South Africa, especially for Black-owned businesses. So what are the stumbling blocks?
I like that statistic, and I'm going to tell you why, because I think it paints a beautiful picture.
Thanks too.
You are saying 3% of VC capital in America goes to women-owned entities. In South Africa, 3% of all our pension fund money goes to private equity. So I'm not just talking VC, which is a subcomponent, private equity. So we first have to intervene at the level of availability of capital to fund managers and think about the interventions that are needed there. Great, there's been some regulatory changes that have opened that up, which we are hoping will start encouraging a lot of pension funds to really increase their thresholds towards private equity. However, if one bank takes a step back and says, if it's 3% going to private equity broadly, how much of it goes to venture capital more specifically? Way little. And the reason for that is because it's a nascent asset class. We still are in that point in our journey where a lot of venture capital fund managers have to still educate institutional investors around venture capital, etc. And it really is the best way to get capital into companies, right? But there's a lot of education that needs to happen. There's a lot of track record that has to be built to get our institutional investors also comfortable because they've got fiduciary duties. And there's great work that needs to happen there. So then we have to think about how then that capital flows from the VC fund manager to then the companies, in the sense that companies have to evolve and grow to a certain level to access VC. So if you think about the growth journey of a company, starts off as an idea, you grow the idea, and then it gets to a certain age, and you need capital across all the stages of a company, from idea to seed, to when it's early stage, to when it's growing, because venture capital plays in a finite life cycle of a company. So we firstly have to make sure that there's capital efficiency in the entire value chain, all the way from inception right up until when you actually get this company to where it's able to access venture capital. And then once it's grown to a certain stage, then it's able to move into private equity. So those are the stages where I think we need to think about intervention, because the reality is we have to find intervention.
Do you have any more light?
It's too little money that is going firstly into companies that need growth capital, and then that going into women-owned. And we found, for example, when we engage with our fund managers who are female, as well as their portfolio companies. I heard such an inspiring story yesterday from a portfolio company. They manufacture sensors that go on drones. So it's a company, South African. South Africa has amazing entrepreneurs. That's the thing. We've got amazing, lots of entrepreneurs, but we are at risk of our entrepreneurs having to actually leave the country to access capital. That's how serious it is. So we have to think about how we grow local capital for our entrepreneurs. But back to the story. So this lady was saying, firstly, she's a CEO of this company. But for her to even step up into be the CEO of this company, it was because she was able to raise money from female fund managers. So that told her that, okay, I can actually step into a CEO. Because she had female fund managers who are active investors in her company, they had a more inclusionary developmental mindset, which then is able to support her. So if we want to see capital go into more female-owned entities, we see it as, we also as South Africa have to make sure that we grow more emerging female-owned fund managers.
I'm glad, we've got various stakeholders waiting today, so there's going to be a robust discussion around lunchtime, especially with Kuna here. And now, Mr. Kareem, and I actually want to bring it to you because you are the CEO of the NYDA, which is an institution which is in charge with, assisting young people. So yes, young people under the age of 35 are struggling to get funding from banks and everything. So how is the NYDA bridging the gap? And also living into the fact that 37% of South African population is actually young people. So is the NYDA well equipped and well resourced enough to actually tackle what are the challenges saying, and are you well resourced enough to tackle these problems?
At some point, you'll have to tell me why I made the caption. Difficult to be the chancellor of this university. Quite nerve-wracking to do a panel in front of Africa's best universities. But I think where the last speaker started is a good place to start, right? Because I want to give you a statistic, is that if you take the global economy and you measure the number of people who are in formal employment, the number of people who run their own small businesses, are in the informal economy, run gig economy work, micro enterprises, and you take unemployment, get the global average is about 45 to 10. In South Africa, that same statistic is 50, 10, 40. Our formal employment statistics are not that much different from the rest of the world. In fact, we do better on formal employment than a lot of the world does. Yeah? Our challenge is in small businesses, informal enterprises, micro enterprises, right? And a business is never going to grow into something that requires private equity or venture capital if you don't start off supporting young people at the bottom of the food chain, which is where the NYDA has seen the gap in the market for ourselves. It doesn't pay a Standard Bank or Nedbank or anybody else to invest at that level, but it's the most critical level if we're going to be able to fix our economy. Right? So we've very much seen in that, how do you build a young person who has very little experience or is not the beneficiary of a very strong education system. How do you support a young person in that way? Right? And I think we've come across some things, not only ourselves, because government is big, it's not just the NYDA, but of course we have the Department of Small Business, a number of provincial entities that play in that space as well. But I think some of the things that we've seen over time that allow us to build entrepreneurs is that there has to be an element of skills development involved. So you can't just take somebody and pull them out and expect them to be an entrepreneur just like that. And typically what we see is building some level of financial management skill, some level of marketing and skill and sales skills development is critical in building an entrepreneur. What we also see is that resilience is critically important. Something that young South Africans don't lack, by the way. We've told them to have resilience for a number of years, but you must match that resilience with some kind of intentional risk. And I think we have tailored development finance support at a level that enables us to support micro entrepreneurs, but invest in entrepreneurs that have the ability to be able to grow themselves over time. Now, my colleague next to me, I don't know how she sees it now, because if I look at liability situation, she'll tell you there's no money in government. Really, there's no money. We're scraping around trying to find ways to keep the SRD drug. That's not bad. The reality is that you have to bring the private sector into this conversation. And we have to make the private sector more accountable for what they do. Yes, government must be accountable. And that's why we publish on an annual basis how much we spend on youth owned enterprises, how much we spend on
Nice shot too.
but there needs to be more accountability around ESD funding, around what are financial services companies actually do. Because I think as much as training is important, we need more than just training intervention. We have to spend on actually empowering people to start up small enterprises. We have to invest at the micro level, townships and rural economies. If we're really going to address the challenges that we face. And I think the culture we're going to spoke passionately about. There's a lot of work that is already happening in the sector. There's a lot of positive, but there needs to be greater accountability. And I fully agree with my fellow panelists in saying that where you have greater representation of women, they are more likely to invest in hiring. And we must continue to fight for representation because then we'll start to see better outcomes. Last point I want to make is to say, it is also important to recognize progress. Right? I thought it was an interesting picture at BRICS last. It was the South African ministerial delegation in China. And she just might have tweeted that South Africa wants to get drunkards. But there was another point that came up, is that the Chinese delegation was all men. Where in South Africa, when we compare ourselves to BRICS countries, we find that we have much better gender equality. We have done better at providing access to young girls to go to school. We produce more female graduates than we do male ones. So we must take progress, not to pat ourselves on the back and say, hey, we've done great, but to take what's working and build on that. Because then we'll start to see better outcomes.
I have to say, thank you for that, for these insights, Sim. And I just want to build on what you said, just pose a question to Roger. We have a lot of entrepreneurs who run businesses at YFC in South Africa who get turned away by funding institutions on the premise that they're not funding ready. So what are your institutions, the GDSA for example, what are you guys doing to assist female founders to actually be able to access that capital?
Thank you for that question.
On one.
And possibly beginning at again touching on policy, touching on the DVS link to the state. So we get a policy directive from National Treasury, which is our shareholder, and influenced by national development plans. Our strategies and our policies are also impacted by the wider Africa discussion. So the African Union's Agenda 2063 is also a pillar of our strategy and direction. And then also touching on just the wider ESG impact investing theme. Wherein DBSA, as I mentioned, has just has over the years been refining that ESG strategy and impact outlook to incorporate ESG, to incorporate gender mainstreaming into its ESG processes, to look at how it can incorporate the same themes as it looks at investment appraisal processes. So in essence, we have 4 key pillars around our strategy. So the first being the investment, the second being around capacity building. And therein we look at capacitating SMEs. There's a focus on technical and education-related non-funding support. Our third pillar is then on partnerships. So looking at those 4 key focus areas, and maybe going back to the first one, as we invest, the DBSA has created in particular a gender marker tool that is applied to each project or each opportunity that presents itself. Within that tool, there is a focus particularly on Black and female and youth, as well as people with disabilities, as it relates to their shareholding in projects. There's a focus on management control and staff complement. So we ask, as we appraise transactions, those are some of the key pillars. We also look at the extent of local economic participation. Also tied to that is specific environmental, social, and governance measures that are tracked throughout the investment lifecycle, all the way through to reporting. And then as it relates to partnerships, we work closely with and are partnering with the Department of Women, Youth, and People with Disabilities. The DBSA, as part of the International Development Finance Club, recently undertook a gender readiness assessment. And then also, as mentioned, we, as a result of our shareholding from the state, those policy directives, then we have to translate them really into how does our funding flow into specific SMEs. So we can also fund projects throughout their life cycle. So we have an opportunity to look at projects in their pre-bankable stage, look at projects at bankability, and also we have an ongoing strategy to improve our portfolio. So as it relates to how we specifically looking at gender lens investing, SME development, the DBSA of its 110 billion rand book and portfolio, it has earmarked up to 10%, as it stands, actually more than 10%. So we're looking at an equity allocation of about 14 billion versus 110 billion rand book. So just over the 10% mark, or near the 10% mark invested in equity. We have a dedicated facility for 450 million specifically for Black equity requirements, equity requirements for Black businesses, women-owned businesses. We have also recently and are considering re-entering the VC and PE space, wherein we're looking at a facility to support first-time fund managers, focusing on Black and women. So the intent there is to support those first-time fund managers to the tune of 300 million for their first raise, with a requirement of 30% being allocated to Black management of Black female-owned businesses. So we also have an internal target as we appraise to encourage our clients to invest at a minimum, or between 3 female shareholders at a minimum of 35%. We also have an impact investing team, which is it has a venture, you could call it akin to a venture capital fund. It focuses on technology commercialization, for Black women as well as youth-based business. The DBSA is also a beneficiary and a fund manager on behalf of various European green capital funds. We also manage funding on behalf of DEF, that is for the investment for the green economy, And within the funding criteria for that facility those facilities is a strong focus on Black and women-owned businesses. So there's a lot that we're doing at the DVSA, and perhaps maybe our website often doesn't go to some of the successes, but certainly there is an increased focus. And also what we'd like to also like to share is, the DVSA has also, I guess, in its own history, made a probably the biggest stride. We have a Black female CEO in her mid-40s. So, and I think, so and optics are very important, and that's why I think I'm a strong believer in, the state, the scene, and optics are key. We need to see women represented, because if they're represented from a regulatory perspective, regulation becomes regulation becomes institutional culture then filters to each individual desk, so I've got a Black female CEO, Project Arouse that isn't female capacity. It gives me the spirit and the strength to question those policies that may not always be implemented. So and like I said, they say we're really great with policy frameworks, global, world class, but then it comes down to that actual implementation. And that's why I think we have to look across. Representation is important, policy is important, and then DVSA also, as an institution, should be held accountable as an implementing agent for development.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that, Mr. Vega, and I like the fact that there's so many initiatives and you're looking at it from very strategic points of view. And I think I really admire the fact that now the DVSA is looking to invest in female VCs, which will now impact entrepreneurs at large. So, and just to touch a point on that, that research says that women founders are impacted by unconscious bias when they're looking for funding, such as affinity bias and confirmation bias, because people want to invest in people that look like them. They want to invest in people who they can relate to, or people who they trust. And now the absence, or the fact that there's very few women investment firms, means that this affects women businesses negatively. When there's very few women who are investment principals or at investment committees, it actually affects women-owned businesses negatively. So now, looking at this, how can we accelerate funders, women funders or women investors as a catalyst of increasing funding for women? So I want us to talk about it from a policy perspective. So I'll bring you, Wanga, and Tiki, so if you could share on that as well.
Okay, perhaps I will talk to it less from a policy point of view, but more from a representation point of view.
Thanks too, that's great.
Yeah, okay, because if I think of flow of funds and funds that must ultimately get to a female entrepreneur, and I broaden it within, like, look at the South African landscape broadly. If you have, for example, a pension fund that has female representation, you are likely to see that pension fund think about how money goes into Black and or female asset managers. And once that Black asset manager or female owned asset manager is able to get that anchor capital from a pension fund that's taking a risk on them, because really that's how it's perceived. They anchor capital, they see as risk, they are then more able to raise money from other allocators and other pension funds. And once they're able to do that, they're then able to invest that capital potentially into a Black-owned fund manager. And from there, that money will go into a Black entrepreneur. So for me, representation at all levels ultimately is important, because if that representation is there, then you've got people who are questioning how allocation of capital happens, and you've got people who are then thinking about the policies that must be drafted to ensure that money ultimately flows. Because if you've got, for example, a black female chairperson in a pension fund, they're going to really say, we must have an investment policy statement that says that fund managers can't talk to us only if you can tick certain boxes. You must have women representation, you must be X% black, you must be channeling or give us proof that your money is going into investee companies that work a certain way. And that becomes part of how they report to the investor.
No, thank you so much for that, Teresa and Wanga.
I'll come in quickly on that. So how we look at it is from a funding perspective. And how we go about it is, should we be in a position to raise debt? What we do is we ensure that a certain portion of that debt that we raise, or loans that we raise, or support that we get from institutions is earmarked to Black women in business. I'll give you an example. Currently, we are busy with the climate finance, raising funds for climate finance as part of that 8.5 billion that was committed at COP. And part of that commitment is that 30% of it looks at just transition, which is the social element. And we insist on that because our government's priorities are actually quite skewed towards empowering women, led households, women businesses, and disadvantaged communities. And therefore, 30% of the funding that we're going to be raised would need to support those areas where there's women that are leading households as well as women businesses. Also, at the same time, we just recently launched the Energy Bounce Back Scheme that was launched beginning of August, a couple of weeks ago, that supports generating about 1,000 megawatts through solar rooftops, and that is earmarked to say that 30% of that should be to fund women in businesses, also micro businesses as well. And also, we need to rethink mandates to our DFIs, development financing institutions. They cannot operate like commercial banks. They should be able to take riskier projects, especially if it benefits women, if it benefits household-led women, and also young people that want to start up their businesses, because you can't have a DFI operating as a commercial bank where they're also requesting for assets. And if you're starting a business, it becomes very difficult that you say you want to empower women and businesses, but yet you've got these hurdles that they would need to, cross over before they can get that funding. So these are some of the things that we are discussing, some of, things that we've observed that we think as government we need to institute and put in place. Yeah, it's not perfect. We know that there's a lot of things that we can do and still need to do to address this.
And just on that note, I want to say I'm very excited that it does seem indeed that the future is bright. Money is available. There are changes that are happening at a policy level. There are changes that are happening from the venture capital, from the PSA. It seems from the NYJ, it seems all the funders are actually relooking and restructuring themselves to match the economy that they are in. We're not Europe, we're South Africa, and it seems like you're using that lens. And I really like the point where I wanted to say the mandate on DFIs, they can't operate like commercial banks because by virtue of that, they exclude a lot of entrepreneurs. So unfortunately, I'm not be taking any questions due to my the program director giving me a very, very strong eye. However, my panelists are around for the lunch session, so feel free to interact, to pitch to them, to do everything. And thank you so much for being such an amazing audience.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Imali Ikon. Let's give Auntie and her panelists a big round of applause. Auntie, thank you very much. I think that was a very courageous conversation because we're saying we need to be quite intentional about how do we move from the reality of women picking up the crumbs of the capital that is available and begin to reset that blueprint so women have a shot at the share of the money that is available. So with that, we're going to turn our focus now to our screens. We are getting ready for our final panel. But before we get to the final panel, I'd love to bring your attention to just a voice on our screens, talking to us about the importance of intergenerational leadership, because that's actually what we're doing here today. We are, through mentorship, unlocking the power of intergenerational leadership. Please do enjoy, and then I'll be right back to introduce our final panel for the day.
Thanks, gents.
My view on intergenerational leadership is that we have an African saying that says, "Indlela ibuza phambili." So what that means is that for anything, you need to consult those people that have gone that path, that have had the experience, that have made the mistakes, so that you can improve on what they have done. So within the context of women in leadership, there is absolutely nothing new about the issues that are facing women. So for us to recreate those approaches instead of consulting the women that have been before us really makes us we try to reinvent the wheel. So intergenerational leadership becomes very important because then we can gain from learning from those people that have been there, they've walked the path, they've learned, and then we can build on it to improve on the leadership. Empowering women, young leaders is very important because you have to continually build the pipeline of future leaders. And what best is a way than learning from those people like the leaders that have walked the path. Mentorship and education is very important. As I started off by saying that Indlela ibuza phambili. So if you have a mentor, it means that young leader has an opportunity to learn from somebody that has walked the path, that has the experience, that has got the skill that can guide the individual so that you make your path much more easier. The message that I would like to give to young leaders, YLC or South Africa or the leaders in the world is that the world is truly your oyster. You need to take advantage of that opportunity that you have, and you also need to daily look out for the positive things in life. Don't get drawn into all the negativity because you have so much to contribute to this world. And also you have an advantage, like all of us, that you're standing on shoulders of giants that have walked the path, and they have made your path easier in one area. The other most important part is that you need to identify what is your story, what is the story that you want to write. Because if you look at previously, our political leaders wrote a political story. The question for you, for me, is what is your story? I would like to congratulate the YMC on your theme of embracing equity. So when we leave this place, we must think about our role in embracing equity.
What is your story? And I think that's a question to each and every one of us. What is the story you want to be told? Not when you're gone, even in the moment, in the here and the now. And how are you writing that story through the actions of every day, through the decisions that you're making, but also on the things that you choose to be a part of and the things that you choose to exclude yourself from. In every one of those actions and inactions, we are writing and telling our story. So a very big thank you to Ma'am Futhi for always filling us with wisdom and always challenging us as we try to hang on to this baton that we've been given in this journey of intergenerational leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me such pleasure now to introduce the moderator of our last panel for the day. She is the co-head of our Ideal Book Club. She's a finance professional. She has over 10 years in investment banking. And one of the things that she's really passionate about is mentoring startups. Her name is Kati Shaise, and as she comes up let's give her a round of applause. And I can ask you to stop there because you know the drill now. There's a song, there's a dance. We're doing it all proper. But I just want to quickly say that the panel that she's going to be leading is asking the question, how are we going to build stronger pipelines for better outcomes? And the intent of the panel is to begin to interrogate even further the role of educational institutions, whether we're looking at primary education or higher education, tertiary education, executive education. How are we really gearing up our women for leadership? What do educational institutions need to do differently to begin to ensure that we have stronger pipelines? With that, can I please have the song, Kati? The floor is yours.
I've got an amazing panel for this final discussion this afternoon. And our topic, as Nozi was saying, stronger pipelines for better outcomes. Why education institutions matter most in building leadership pipeline. When we were debriefing with my panelists, we agreed that we're not going to focus too much on the problem, but we're going to focus a lot on the solutions. We're going to focus a lot on what are the lessons learned. What are the examples that exist currently in society and where can we actually build from? This stat has been repeated quite a bit today, that there are more female graduates in South Africa than male graduates. Yet there's an alarmingly low rate of female executives and an even lower rate of female CEOs. Let's let that sink in a bit. And this is despite many companies hiring on a one-to-one basis for graduates at entry level, so one-to-one in terms of male and female. There's a study that was done by Stellenbosch University, which says women ranked higher than men when it comes to completing matric and undergraduate studies. But unfortunately, there's this gender leak, this natural attrition that takes place of female leaders in middle management and senior management. And today the conversation is going to help us to say, how do we respond to this gender leak? Allow me to introduce my phenomenal panel of speakers. I am going to start with Ma'am Futhi. Ma'am Futhi is co-founder of Teach SA, and she is an IWFSA member. We are definitely keeping it in the family. Yeah, Ma'am Futhi says she wants the song as well. Next, I'm going to call up Ms. Shamla. Ms. Shamla is the CEO of Duke University. She's also a member of IWFSA. And just to mention that Duke is ranked #1 in professional and continuing development. So that's what I'm going to call up Ma'am Judy Dlamini, Vice Chancellor of Wits Witwatersrand Last but certainly not least, I am going to call up my colleague, Letiwe, Senior Lecturer at the University of Johannesburg. take us probably to the beginning. And I think this conversation, I'm hoping, will help us to get a sense of how can we hack the system to give women an equitable shot. Mom Judy, I'm going to start with you, right? Let's start with the girl child. How do we ensure that we support the girl child at every level, right, from basic and higher education, to ensure that we're not having these conversations with her at this age where I am, or at this level? How do we ensure that these things are built in all the way through as they are growing and just participating in various avenues?
Thanks very much for that question, Kanti, and good afternoon. It's an honor to be here. You know, we always talk about schools and education, and we never speak about the first school you encounter as a child, which is home. And you know, the first leaders you meet are your parents, and the collaboration between your parents and the teachers, especially in early childhood, determine the person that you become. They also determine the outlook that you have of the world. So I'm happy that you have young mothers here, some of them still to be, but more importantly, aunts, you know, and a few uncles. And I think the message that we give to a girl and boy child determines how we have what we have right now, like a patriarchal system, toxic masculinity, and it takes a lot of unlearning the things that you were taught, the messages that were given to both boys and girls, and the chores that we give to girls as opposed to boys. And I think the message has to change, and you consciously have to change how we see the two, girls and boys, and the binary, I'm old, but we have to be sensitive that there's also the gender neutral group that we need to embrace and be cognizant of their existence and belonging because of the message we sent to them. At the beginning of everything else, what are we saying to the girl child? Are we saying, we are Vila Kawena, you won't get married? Because we have to change that. Because you don't get better because you are validated by a man. You're just born equal and you're born belonging. So I think that message is important. And then, of course, the teachers, we need conversations at our schools as to how we raise, because that's a partnership, as I've said, between the two parties, the teachers and the parents. How, when they get to the school then, what message are we giving? And remember, there's a phase in your life where you think the teacher knows it all, your parents don't know as much. So it matters what the teacher says, because it will either validate the value system from home or actually negate it. For now, that's all I'll say.
That's great, and that is important, is the criticality of the role of teachers in the lives of young people. Mom Futhi, I'd like for us to just touch a little bit on Teach SA, the initiative. And in the work that you guys do there, does it look at,
Sorry.
do you incorporate the gender lens in the work that you do? Can you repeat that way?
Thank you very much for having me here. And I think all protocol has been observed, but it will be remiss of me not to recognize my president of Abasa, Lydia Mutsama here. Welcome. Yes, so Teach South Africa actually was a call to action. And it was built at the back of another project that I had done as a president of Abasa, which was what we called the Nkuhlu Subvention Fund, where recognizing that in the accounting profession, we had all those lecturers and nobody looked like us, and we also had what used to be where you had to leave Limpopo to come and apply at the highest esteemed university that was mentioned earlier. And before then, you even needed a permission to do that. So by our time, the permission was gone. But if you can understand the African family, that's a dislogic. when you have to move to come and apply. So we felt we need to drive the fact that our own few Black accountants must teach at the universities. And we actually encourage SAICA to then, in order to assist those universities to be accredited for you to qualify. So the call to action was, young Black people, once you pass, please take a lower salary, we will augment your salary a little bit, go back to those universities to teach. Then once that was running, because I like to come up with the project and somebody must get it right. So once that was running, then the question was, where will those skills come from? And also, we had a Gauteng that was talking about making the Gauteng a city of excellence. We all know that beautiful buildings do nothing, or computers. You need humans behind them. And it's the humans that even make that AI today, but I think the AI is superior than us now. So therefore, the skills that were necessary to position yourself, to create that excellence, that's position for growth, that's position to be at the cutting edge. You needed those key subjects like math, science, English, and technology. Of course, now our own Black people had lots of opportunities now. They were going into engineering and everyone, whereas before, the primary sector was education. So you had all the brightest minds of our people, the Black, teaching in schools. They had alternative opportunities. So we had to find a way to bring the young people back into the teaching profession by recruiting them as they graduate from that engineering, from that accounting, from that, to go back and teach. And then in that way, we also believe they will be grounded in understanding the context of those countries and of those communities. Some of them might come from there, but others don't. And then also, by so doing, then if they teach for 2 years, they understand what's happening in that field, the quality of the education, they can improve it because they're now coming with skills. And then if they leave, our aim was that we build a pipeline of teachers that are now qualified differently. But at the same time, should they go and be CEOs, an NGO coming to ask for funding in education, they will have a different view because they know the context from which this individual person comes. So by so doing, so we were surprised that when everyone was saying, how are you going to get a young engineer and to move from engineering and shock parents? Of course they did, they shocked parents, they came up to teaching and all my money is gone and you are just going back to teaching, but they did. And what is good, to cut a long story short, because it is a very long and good story, I need a day and a year to talk about it. We have a retention of about 60%. Wow. That have now moved either qualifying in higher in education, in higher degrees, and going back to do work in education. Mambo comes from Teach South Africa, is now part of this school. And yeah, so that is the good story because they then understood that. So that was the gist of it. You cannot build the intellectual capacity that you need for your country to be at a cutting edge and be competitive without competitive mind, and it all comes from a teacher. That's why it was
You were really talking about equipping the educator. I want to bring Lethiwe into the conversation. Lethiwe, for some of you that might not know, YLC established a student chapter this year. Why was it important for us to do that, to be physically present at universities? And why is this model important for the work that YLC is doing?
Thank you so much, Kathy, and thank you again for sharing space with such prominent women. Greeting everyone. Just to reflect on the stats that you gave us earlier of unemployment rate, unemployment rate, currently we have 32.9 unemployed people, and also when we look at women, we have 35.7. It's above the average of unemployment rate. And those who are in practice, who are employed and are looking for employment at 54%, will compare to 64% of men counterparts. Then through this theme that you're talking about with the stronger pipelines, through YLC, because our vision is for us to empower the future and for us to develop and future ethical leaders. Through the student chapter, we are able to do that. And through student chapter, we're reflecting on YLC pillars of mentorship, entrepreneurship, conversations, and group chapters. We get the opportunity to expose students as what Dr. Dlamini said here in terms of from family, from household, students, learners, and kids get groomed. So with the student chapter, it enables learners before they get to the employment age, then they get exposure for them to be more equipped and more aware of what to be to position themselves, and when they graduate, they are employable. And if not employable, they can create jobs. I'm sure most of you have met our students at UJ. All the ushers that you saw today are the students. Thank you so much. So through the student chapter, we are really ensuring that the leak is covered. We don't have a leak of this pipeline of female leaders that we want to bring in. And with our initiatives, not only about conversations, we also put we go put the boots and go to the schools and ensure that we action whatever that we want to achieve, and to ensure that the future is achieved and ethical leaders are developed. Last week we went to all of our coaches from our school so that we equip our students that are mentoring today, so that they can be exposed and know the importance of paying it forward, so that whatever that they do, whatever that they receive from YLC, they also take it back to high schools to ensure that the pipeline continues until we get to maybe to the Essential Women Program, which is the leader of our Young Leaders Connect.
I mean, just to build on top of that, I feel like it's a trajectory of some sort. Ms. Shamla, I mean, there's been a plethora of women's leadership programs over the past couple of years, right? A lot of companies, organizations are sending women in their organizations to get this training. But could one maybe take a step back and say, is this a signal that we are saying women need fixing of some sort before they can assume leadership positions? Why is continuous professional development important? And maybe share some trends and statistics that you are seeing through corporate education.
So thank you so much for this. And firstly, I want to say, thank you to Ashman and to Fosa for relaunching YLC. I think it's been a vision, and if you watch this, it means that every girl child matters, right? And every young generation matters. And I think they have started this movement of change, including the mentoring circle. And I want to say, our president of IPSA is here, and all the members, thank you so much for supporting this initiative, because it's an important initiative, for our country, for the continent, and for the world. Then if we go back, we know that 50% of the current employees need to reskill themselves. So when you talk about women, we don't need fixing. We need to make ourselves a project, and we need to be intentional. That we need to actually make sure that when jobs are lost, we are there. We also raise our hands for new jobs that are there. So that means it's the upskilling movement that must happen every single day. And this is not about age. When you stop learning, you become old. Right? So I want to say that. So we know that 85 million jobs will go, but we also know that 97 million jobs are going to be there. So how are we as women being ready for those jobs? So we need to make sure that we start early. As an early childhood, we know, are we being ready at the moment? We know there's machines versus humans. It's not going away, it's going to be there. So I think the continuous learning, I refer what I call is liquid learning, right? And as a learner, you have to be curious. You have to think more critically. You have to problem solve differently. It's learning in context, not content. Because we can see what happens with GP chat. We can see the internet. We can actually access information at speed right now. To a student the other day, and they were writing their assignments. So what happens now? Knowledge is easily accessible. But I think what we need to think about, what are the new skills that we can actually skill ourselves? Is it design thinking? You know, so it's the creativity. Robots can't take creativity, you know? So, and women are naturally intuitive to the new skills as well. And I think we also need to think about the new roles in jobs that are going to come out. You know, compliance officers are going to be called trust officers. You know, CHR roles are called happiness officers. CEO's titles have been called purpose. So are we ready as women to think about and raise our hands for the most difficult tasks? Because it's not there. And, you know, as it's coming, are you available for the new roles as well? So I think it's important for us to keep on reskilling and upskilling, and to create that movement of change. We collectively learn together, we collectively share knowledge together, we also play as well to the younger generations.
Michelle, I like that, and I think we're going to unpack that, I don't want to say a little bit later, but in a little bit, just to speak to this sort of set of toolbox, like the necessary skills, the skills of the future that we need as young women. Ma'am Judy Phelps, and this is Female Academic Leadership Fellowship. This is a great example that you launched and you founded to really build a leadership pipeline within the tertiary institutional context. Maybe take us through that, because I think that's an amazing case study to say it does work, it is being done. And I think just to speak to what Manfred was talking about with regards to Teach SA, with regards to equipping the educators as much as we are looking at equipping the students for the learners.
Thanks for that. You know, we speak a lot about gender lens, which is great. But with the history that we have in this country, it needs to be broader than just a gender lens. Because we as women are not a homogeneous group. We haven't had the same impact across different groups of women in this country. So if we only look at a gender lens, someone who looks like me will always remain behind. And what do I mean by that? We have races, different races that women belong to. And we were oppressed in a different way. The type of education that we received impacts on how we show up, because there's so much more that has to be invested in us, just to be at the same level with other races within the gender group. So when I became chancellor, so I always look for that wherever I go. So when I entered academia as a non-executive, well, in the corporate way of looking at things, but it really is just a ceremonial role, as Futi and everyone else knows. I thought, you know, every leadership position has a responsibility. And what is my responsibility? Knowing what I know from business, that when it comes to a gender lens that is not intersectional, you leave out the women. What can I do? So I did a study, I checked, and similar to corporates, you know, you have gender looking good, sometimes at leadership level, and you think, oh, 40% we're doing well. But unless you use an intersectional lens to see who are these women, you'll see that Black women are not showing up, whether as professors, heads of schools, deans, and what have you. But complaining doesn't help, and I always subscribe to the Futi way of doing things, to say, what can we do? So Female Academic Leaders Fellowship is just about that. So I said I'll put my 2 cents. I never raised funds before, and I'll try and raise funds so that we assist women, one, for them to be seen, those women that are lecturers. And you know, it was so interesting, and evidence-based solutions matter, because you throw the book at people and say, it's not just me being silly, this is what the statistics shows. when it comes to Black females, you found that it was a great pipeline as associate lecturer and lecturer, but they were not showing up as professors or leaders, right? And you then say, okay, what has happened over the past 10 years? Because as a university, we are big on transformation. It's just the lens that we use that doesn't accommodate all people. So, and then you see for the past 10 years, they've remained or actually decreased in number when it comes to professors. And that's where visibility is, that's where leadership is drawn from. So I'm happy to say we've been around for 3 years. And in the 3 years, we have 71 fellows. We had our second research symposium last week. And yeah, women have been promoted. Next year, we'll launch the gender-based priorities. And I just want to thank the women. You know, they say we always talk about what's working, but we also need to acknowledge women that answer the call. Mima Disa from BeatFest, when I was looking around thinking, oh my goodness, who's going to help fund this? I sent her an email, and before I could think of my story, she was like, here's the money, where you do the work. Rebecca Oppenheimer from Ubomi Trust, she said, here's the money, go do it. Other people followed, but those two women.
So that's very impressive, Marjorie. I think that's been the topic today, to say let's put our money where the action is. Maybe again to bring in just the voice and the profile of students. So there's various capacities in which students are provided for an opportunity to participate and develop certain leadership skills, be it sports, faculty societies. Are these working? Are students actually putting their hands up and participating? Is it helping to just address some of these challenges that we say we need in a lot of our young leaders?
Yes, there's a number. I'm so stuck to what Dr. has responded on. Because I also am academic and I think I'll speak to her afterwards. And going back to your question, yes, as I've explained earlier, most of the students that we have here, our mentors, they are in leadership positions because they're mentoring our STS students at the University of Johannesburg. And when I reflect, I'm going to be biased, I reflect to UJ because I'm a UJ member. So at UJ, we have student affairs that ensures that organizations are in place to assist students to get opportunities for them to develop and become leaders. And they focus on 4 pillars in terms of academic, social, religious, and political, where students are groomed to know about policies, comment on policies, and we see students there, not only males are taking leadership positions, but females as well. And also with departments and faculties, including my faculty, College of Business and Economics, we at the department, we have partnered with White Young Leaders Connect, and we have student executives, which consists of 6 female students, and out of the 6, 5 are our alumni. So we are doing very well to ensure that students are exposed to opportunities, they are groomed to become leaders. The only problem is that we see that there are a lot of intakes of students wanting these opportunities, but the funding, we don't have resources to ensure that we give opportunities to all students. The same as YLC, we have initiatives that I've mentioned earlier, but for us to action the plan, we need resources and we struggle with that. Even the university itself, socio-economic issues, the budget from TNET has been reduced because of the issues we have in the country financially. So we need partners from private sector to assist in ensuring that we sustain and give students opportunities for them to develop and they become ethical leaders that we want to draw into as Young Leaders Connect.
Yeah, I love that. I love the incorporating mentorship into the student chapter as well, so that I guess the postgraduate students, they mentor first years. That's just amazing.
And just to add on that, with the student chapters, I've seen the drive with different ABASA, AWSCA, it's very active. There's a bias on student chapters, and it's a great time to be a student, and I wish I could be opportunities are plenty for students to grow and become leaders that we want to see.
So I mean, you just did your PhD, you can't go back and...
No, I have to, I'm regarding more empowerment to become a professor.
Let's have it there because obviously funding allowing, we want to scale it and roll it out to all the universities.
Yes.
And we do have a partnership with UJ on one of our projects.
Thank you.
Ms. Chandra, going back to the professional development and training aspect, right? And for a lot of us sitting here today, what work does Duke Corporate Education do to ensure that Duke is not just offering programs, but these are programs that are relevant. These are programs that are actually enabling young women to either accelerate their journeys or move from one level to another. So what's that work in terms of monitoring and evaluation that is being done?
So I think you're absolutely correct, because it's not about content, it's about context. So as we design programs, it has to be around context. Skills are changing all the time. And so you have to be, when the curriculum is built, it is built and standardized. We have the flexibility of changing the curriculum, meaning that it is on context, not content. So we're not building curriculums based on academic, sounding to say that it has to be a marketing module. We're saying that you can teach marketing, but can you actually apply marketing? Right, that's the difference. And for us, if you're teaching problem solving and decision making, we would use immersive methods, because we want to see the applications done in the workplace. Meaning that if you use doctors on call for problem solving, because why? Doctors ask good questions, they teach you how to problem solve, and then we actually simulate a hospital, and we take participants to the hospitals, make them become doctors, and have a scenario with patients. In that way, they learn to actually ask questions, they learn to listen, they can actually see, they apply the skills in real time. Another immersive method we use is, lawyers. We have a simulation called At Court, meaning that if you are debating issues, you need to understand how you're going to debate. As a woman leader, what conversations, what dialogue you're having for pro and against, but how do you solve problems differently? So it's about, why is Duke ranked #1 in the world? It's because they're really great in design. They bring design principles, into this. It's not teaching academic content. It's using the basis of academic content to build on the practice. So, and can you actually measure it? Because at the moment, we're wanting to see impact. I worked with a large manufacturing company, and it was a leadership program. But the first project we brought was 240 million savings, and we saved jobs. We saw promotions happen. We saw a change in the structure as well. Because then we use design thinking to implement these projects as well. So I think for me, it is about, you have to be relevant. You have to be aligned to the new skills, and we have the flexibility of changing the context all the time. And yes, of course, Duke is a great university, but we also work with other universities, because it's co-learning and co-sharing as well in our country. Because although we rank #1, it's important we build the ecosystem, because the education system needs everybody. Every person in the system. So we partner with UJ, we partner with WIT, we partner with UT, because collectively we can be stronger, supporting a system and sharing what they do. And the piece around, a great example is Madam President who's here, the IPSO 1000 program. It's highly immersive. It's not just taking academic content, it's actually applying that academic content to see the shift in behavior. I think for us, it's important to see the shift in behavior and skills to make it work. Can you measure it? And often people say to me, you want to see the measurement, at the end of a year. No, you can't. Because if you truly measure, you'll see the first change is happening about creating self-awareness, building confidence, saying that I can raise my hand for the new job, and the next year something else happened, the next year. So we need to measure over a period of 3 years to see that it's successfully implemented. So, if you talk about this, it's around making the shift and adding on. I was working with a client this morning, and immediately the client said to me, hey, I said, we've got AI readiness course, because you need to build in the microbytes. It's not just going, are you adding mentoring? Are you adding coaching? At the moment, Duke's using AI coaching too. So we don't, humans are being replaced, but how are you using different methods to bring this into the process?
Yes, sure. Talk about impact. I like that. We're running out of time. I think it's probably a better time for us to wrap up the conversation. Very quick, punchy, under 20 seconds. I'm going to start with Mamfuti, and this is a question for all of you ladies. Final thoughts on how education is helping us build a more equitable solution. 20 seconds, and then we'll just go across.
So I would prefer not to answer that one, but the big question that says, where is the link between when the smart girl leaves the university gate and enters the workplace, and then they can't grow, they somehow become dull in between them. And I think it's the most important thing is really cultural. So programs like what you are doing now in YLC to reach out to schools, it means you're preparing a place so that when the person enters that gate, somebody is waiting. Because when you enter a new environment, you need to feel accepted. And it is that culture that we need to be. And our organization, like the ILFF, in its endeavor, it's trying to make people find people already waiting for them, so that you then have somebody that can guide you. That's my
Thank you so much. I believe through education, narratives and negatives social norms can be changed, and equity can be embraced. As long as that has been said, can be achieved.
Thank you.
My plea is that one, let's unlearn the perpetration of patriarchal systems. Whenever you think of saying something and then you realize, damn, that's wrong. It's actually making a woman less. It's actually saying a woman needs to be validated by a man. So it's going to be a conscious effort from every one of us because we are based on prejudice. Two, let's create networks wherever we are, where women have a space to breathe, where they can actually just peer-to-peer mentorship within the same company, be your sister's support, because sometimes it gets very difficult. It's a hostile world against women, so we have to change it in sisterhood. Three, when you have the privilege to lead, make sure that you lift us rise. Make sure that you look for those that are furthest behind and solve for them first. Because it's not going to change on its own. It's going to take each one of us in this room to do something. And those that are not in leadership as yet, but have the resources to support that child from the village that you come from, please do that. Thank you.
Sandra, very short final thought. And, we need, as Judy said, talked about it as well. We need to live the rights. We can't leave anybody behind. Education is a human right. Gender is a human right too. I think it's important to be bold, courageous, and we must claim our spaces. We are the accountability partner, and we are responsible for this change. We cannot leave it to somebody else. So we need to take this moment and own this moment, and it's our time.
Wow, thank you so much. Amazing time. And thank you for audience for just listening to us. Cool, thank you so much.
I'm going to lift one of my favorite lines in this conversation. When you stop learning, that's when you become old. And I think it's such a powerful statement because we know that learning doesn't end at any one point. And it's one of the things that allows us to have even reverse mentorship possible, where the mentor is also being mentored by the mentee, because you get a learning loop in the midst of that relationship. But a very big thank you to Kati for doing an exceptional job of moderating that panel, and of course to all our panelists. Let's give them a final round of applause. Now, our last speaker for today was supposed to be joining us on video, on Teams. And then, I'm not sure what happened. Maybe you guys sent pictures that made her look at it and go, no, Mom, I have to be there in person. I'm not sure what happened. Maybe you guys started tweeting some of the insights that were coming out of today. And she said, clear my calendar. I am going to GLC. But the way I want to introduce her, if there's ever been a woman who in my life has stood in the gap for me and has practiced what it means to be a big sister, it's this next woman. She tells her team that if it's not Nozipo or at least another woman who's coming to do this work, we're not going to do it. And on the back of that, I have reaped the benefits of doing amazing work with Standard Bank. And so I'm so grateful that she comes to speak to us not from a theoretical perspective of what the world holds for young women, but in practice, what she is doing from her own lived experience. She's going to be sharing her words. So ladies and gentlemen, it's a privilege for me to welcome the CEO of Personal and Business Banking from Standard Bank. Let's please put our hands together for Madame Funeka. Before you start, and that is to welcome Madam Press and to welcome Madam Chakwasa, who all want to join you on stage and for you to stay on stage.
We're sorry to interrupt. I think you all gonna be acting. I actually, next time when they talk to make a John, you must stand up. Don't just sit, to stand up. So, and I have a reason to say you're gonna have to, they say when women make decisions.
Yeah.
They make decisions. Remember what we asked this morning?
2 million.
What did you say? 2 million a year.
2 million over 3
years. Okay? Harvey said, yes, we're going to make that decision. So as Trifosa, myself, and Charmaine were sitting outside, and here, Madame walks. You just see how. And then one of the Standard Bank ladies was so challenged when she said, no, over 3 years. She said, no, we asked for 2 million. We said, Madame, this is what we asked for. We said, okay, done. We've got it.
joined a bank because, and I said, I don't want to stay in finance. I want to run a business unit so that I can make decisions. Thank you very much for having me here. I am so appreciative of the space. It's not always that you find a room like this full of women. And I want to really recognize everybody who's put together this space because it's a sacred space. Thank you very much. I feel an immense amount of appreciation because I stand here because of the road that was paved by women who came before me. It's women like Mama Ndegi, women like Mama Dumato, women like Als Irene, women like Als Chapoza, Als Shamla, Als Nonkulero Kobodo, Als Judy, Als Nonkulero Menezi, and there are so many of them who came before us. And so everything that I'm going to say, everything that I am, is because they opened those roads for us. It was always clear to me that those gifts require appreciation, but they also they come with a responsibility to take them, to carry them forward. If I think about our generation, I think we took those gifts and we recognized that it was too early to change course. That the gains that have been made can so very quickly regress. Because these journeys we walk sometimes is 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, 4 steps forward, 3 steps back. And we have to continue doing what was done. Because it is easier for us. It is so much easier for us 20, 30 years ago. I'm reminded of the words that Shonda Rhimes said in 2014. And they resonate strongly. She said, I did not break any glass ceilings. My sisters who went before me had already handled it. No cuts, no bruises, no bleeding. Making it through the glass ceiling to the other side was simply a matter of running on a path created by every other woman's group. So I reflected about me being, and I'm now midlife, 45. What is my wishes for younger women who are younger than me? And what are my wishes for my daughters? What do I wish they do? What do they take these gifts and do? You see, a few years ago, I had an honor being part of a delegation of business people who were invited to visit Israel. We specifically spent a lot of time in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, and our very, very dynamic tour guide spent a lot of time complaining about how young people are spoiled, they're entitled, they don't have an appreciation of what was done for them. But on his last day, my final reflection, he said, you know what? That there's now a generation of Jewish kids who can be spoiled, who can be entitled, who can be carefree. And so I guess that is really what my wish is for the next generation. I actually wish you a happy life. I wish things to be easier for you. My definition of happiness comes with a list. A few years ago, I was in part of the World Economic Forum, and the Yale School of Yale University runs this curriculum on happiness. So it's actually a course that they run. It's probably they say it's their most popular course in history, if you think about how old that institution is. And I got 5 takeaways from that, and a lot of that was things I already knew. So I'm gonna run through these 5 takeaways to a happy life. The first one is that money adds to happiness to a certain point. And after that, it plateaus. And that's not saying that money is not important. Money is very important, particularly if it gives you access to personal freedom. You know, and I'm always mindful about how women, young ladies, we do give away so much of our money, and we don't save enough of our money in our own names. I was looking at some data of our client base in Standard Bank in terms of what's the difference between men and women.
there were amazing things there. Number one, like for example, women are more likely to give than 60% more likely to give than men. But the one that I didn't like, it said men are 80% less likely to buy groceries. Now who's buying the groceries? It's you. Because the house is in his name, the car is in his name, and we're all in love and therefore everything's okay. It's actually not. I think that's quite an important thing. Independence requires women to be financially independent. That means money in your name, and preferably the one that nobody knows about, but you and your best friend. I call it another way fund. You need that. So that's quite an important thing. And I also think that money is important, particularly when it enables us to reduce the suffering of others. But the relentless pursuit of money on itself is not going to make us happy. The second attribute of happiness, and this is with deep wounds on my back, I have walked this journey, is this thing called adulting. It's this thing where you are walking and you realize as you walk in, before you do anything, you come to work full, understanding that you don't have to prove yourself, that you're whole. I spent too much time in my career trying to prove myself, prove I can do A, B, C, or D. There's a problem about proving yourself. Proving yourself is putting yourself in a center of an arena and asking people who don't know that you're a straight up one-on-one from your community to judge you. Very dangerous thing. So one of the biggest muscles that I've had to learn is to show up in every space as an adult. I'm showing up to contribute, I'm showing up to learn, I'm showing up to ultimately grow. There's a framework that I absolutely found probably single most in my life, in my work area. It's called transactional analysis. It says there's 3 ways to show up. You can either show up as a child, or as an adult, or as a parent. If you show up as a child, the other person has no choice but to show up as a parent. And me in my career, I was very lucky that most of the time in my working life, I had line managers who were the type of nurturers who are the type of parents who are nurturing. But at some stage, I came across a critical parent, and he almost destroyed me. But it wasn't really only me, him. I opened up that dialogue with him. I gave him that space where he's in a space now where he can enable me to do. Ultimately, I made him a judge over myself. So I think that we need to run away from these spaces where we put people in a position of inner power over us. Remember the words of Kwame Nkrumah that says, those who judge us merely by the heights of what we've achieved would do well to remember the depths from which we started. And many people don't know that, so don't get into that game. Adults, big investments are required here. It just doesn't happen on its own. Just like many of us have had to go to university, university, postgraduate, many years of experience. Adulting is also that. It's a practice. When I access it, and I don't access it every day, I access it through three ways. Firstly, the stories that my grandmother told me of 5 women who came before me and told me who they are. So always remembering that I come from women, family of bold women, hardworking women, and women, although they had very, very little, they actually had a great sense of pride. Those stories are important. Please tell your daughters about the stories of their families. Because when all falls away, I remember Mum Wave, that my grandmother, Mum Zale, that her mother, Mazomo, and her mother is Mum Chawe. Do you understand? And I remember the stories of each of those women, and that scares me and sustains me. I also access it through a very lively meditation practice. The practice that enables me to simply have kindness and friendliness towards myself. Because a lot of us, the things that people say about us, they've already been said by ourselves, that harsh critics within us. I also, I'm growing my portfolio of fun, which is travel, poetry, and arts. I think we need a lot of whimsy in our lives and wonder, and a sense of just running into an experience that you didn't know. I think we are absolutely due for that. The second attribute, so I spoke about money adds to happiness, but to a certain point. Number 2, the importance of adulting. Number 3, the importance of a community. You see, isolation is a mental trauma. You know, there's this product in the Zulu, it's in Inhomo Ishayo. Do you know how negative? That is not a good thing, because I think that all of us, in fact, we can't walk this journey alone. You need a community around you, and that community of sometimes your friends, and those of you in your room, these women in this room, when you cultivate and nurture those relationships, can become part of your community. There are many times where I have to just call someone because, particularly those moments where I have lost sense of myself, I don't remember who I am, the other voice has come through. It's very important to do that. And I also do think that the other part of our community is to warn the young ladies not to take roles where you're gonna feel othered. When you're the only woman in the room, don't do it. It's too late in the journey to do that. Don't do that. I don't want that suffering for you. Because when you're only one in the room, there's not gonna be another woman who's going to look out for you. And that's quite an important one. Don't take those roles. Organizations don't deserve you. And there's a reason why there was no women, they were probably there and left. So please self-sacrifice. Let's move away from that big picture. Make yourself happy, please. My fourth attribute is choose a partner who will be a witness to your life. A person who's going to be comfortable in their own skin and who has enough greatness in themselves to be proud of you and be happy for you. And we don't say this enough. If you want kids, don't wait too long. Please make sure that if you are in a position, not in a position to do anything about it, if you are 28 or older, the number one thing that I want you to do, go and freeze your eggs. It will give you access to a much longer period of fertility. That's if you want children. I wish somebody told me this when I was 28 years old. The last one is, the last attribute of happiness and is giving. Is that of using your work to make a difference. It's very easy because our Constitution of South Africa is very clear. We people of South Africa recognize the injustice of the past, honor those who have suffered for justice and freedom in our land, respect those who have worked to build and develop our country, believe that South Africa belongs to all of those who live in it and united in our diversity. Here's the core job description. Heal the divisions of the past and establish a society based on democratic value, social justice, and fundamental human rights. Lay the foundation for a democracy and open society in which government is based on the will of the people and every person is equally protected by the law. Improve the life of all citizens, free the potential of each person, and lastly, build a united and democratic South Africa. If you are at any point wondering whether your work is making a difference, go back to that constitution. That's a job description. If you can't tie your work to those four things, you gotta really consider. For me, my work is tied to the third one, which is improve the quality of life of all citizens and free the potential of each person. That is what my calling is. Please make sure that the work that you're doing, the skills that you have and your career is tied to that. It's not just a South African smart domain. It says acknowledging the supremacy of the Almighty, of all creation, honoring those who heroically struggled to bring justice and freedom in our land, proud of our ethnic and religious diversity, respectful of the environment, which is nurturing and protecting the well-being of every individual, family, and communities. Number 3, essential values of human rights, equality, freedom. And number 4, the sovereign and inalienable right to determine the form of governance in our country and participating fully in making this constitutional. That's the job description, guys. So I'm here to say, I think the way that we reimagine our society is where we stop. Our starting point is not that of lack. Our starting point is where we start fully realizing that we are missing nothing. And we construct lives that are based on expanding or the pursuit of not only your happiness, but the happiness of others. And therefore, my wish, once again, adults, live in strong community, build strong partnership, and use your gifts and career to give money and impact the lives of others. So in conclusion, one of my favorite pictures that
I've seen was taken by NASA as the space probe Voyager 1. It was taken in February 1990. It's a picture that is about 6 billion kilometers away from, 3.7 billion miles away from the Earth. And it's called, you must Google it, it's called a pale blue dot. For me, it sort of just reminds me that it's not all not that serious. That our planet, in the context of the universe, is a pale blue dot. But it also reminds me that of all the things that I believe to be true, the one thing that I know to be true is that while I don't know for sure why we're here, I'm not sure where we come from. One thing that I know to be true is that while I don't know for sure why we're here, I'm not sure where we come from, and I'm not sure 100% where we're going. What I know is that we are at least here together. So being able to reach out my hand and touch you and be part of a community, Umphakathi, and loving the people I'm with is the greatest way in which I can make the use of my time on this planet.
Yeah, nice
Thank
one.
you.
Come back.
I don't know how many of you kept a dry eye.
1, 2, thank you.
Our starting point is not a point of lack. I am a straight up unicorn, one of one in my community and my society. I think if I say any more, I might not be able to keep it together. But just to say a massive thank you, Sis Funeka, from all of us. Massive thank you, Sis Funeka, from all of us. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we've done some incredible work today. We've had some incredible conversations today, and I only have 2 jobs left to do. The first of these jobs is to do what I call the so what and the now what. So we've spent from 9 a.m. to just shy of 2 p.m. We spent the day together. So what? What is it really going to mean? And of course, the now what are we going to do about it? And so throughout the day, as I was listening, I tried to capture what I would call for us today our 10 provocations. What are the 10 things that we can really reflect on and do something about at the back of today? I'm going to share them with you. And then finally, I'm going to do some thank yous. And then I know that some of us are rushing off to go get more dolled up than we already are right now in preparation for this evening. But let me first start with our first provocation. Women must invest in women. In this moment this afternoon, a clear, not a pledge, a real clear commitment of 2 million rands over 3 years in support of YNC. Women investing in women. My second provocation for us, we heard this from Madame Shanley this morning, from Madame Uwe this morning. Who are you mentoring? And also there are young people in this room. Who's your mentor? They're not going to come out and find you. You've got to go and find them and lift up your hand and say, here I am. And I'm ready for this relationship of mentoring. And so for all of us to walk away today uncomfortable if we're not mentoring anyone, and uncomfortable if we're not being mentored. Our third provocation you heard from the conversation led by Madame Colleen Larson. We are enough and we are ready. And so when the opportunity comes for us to put up our hands for boards, for us to stop disqualifying ourselves. Because we have an internal narrative that says, perhaps I'm not ready. You are ready, and a lot of the things you're going to learn along the way anyway. How many times today did we hear of our leaders talking about failing forward? If they can own their moments of failure, what makes you think that you've got to be perfect in the next role that you assume? Put your hand up. You are ready. Number 4, we heard from Madame Namhlangniki. Legislation doesn't cause transformation. I think that's so important. That even though as we hold our governments responsible for legislation and in our corporate spaces, we hold our leadership responsible for policy, at the end of the day, in the absence of you and me, the equation doesn't hold. And so for the equation to hold, our agency has to be in the room. And we have to use the legislation and those policies as enabling environments for us to make the right decisions. Number 5, equity is all about activation. Actions is what determines results. And so, as much as I, as a conversation strategist, believe that conversation is the birthplace of action, I'm also very soberly aware that conversations on their own are not going to deliver the results we want. And so I hope that we're all provoked here today to activate, to go back and act, to be able to contribute meaningfully to the results that we're looking for. Number 6, we can move from fractured societies and produce whole leaders who build whole societies and who operate in whole economies. And it was such an interesting insight to hear Usis Namhla talking about the possibility of healing that we can have, not only at an individual level, we can heal our institutions, we can heal our economy, we can heal our civil society, we can heal every aspect of our lived experience, but it takes us being intentional about that. The number 7, this came from Ati's panel, Imali Khona. Translated into English, there is money. So let's make sure that women are not getting the crumbs of capital and that we are ready for the lion's share. And so let's be intentional about grabbing the lion's share. Number 8, I heard this from Mama Judy and I thought it was so profound. We've gotten comfortable about talking about the gender lens. As long as there's a gender lens, it's covered. No, it's not. Women are not a homogeneous group. And if we don't do the work for seeing women in their uniqueness and in their nuance, we're going to miss the opportunity to leave no one behind. Because my experience is not the same as your experience, is not the same as that experience. And so if we're going to make advances for women, we need to do more than just personal favorites. Let's live a happy life. As we do the work that we set out to do, let's do it happy. And we've been given the recipe for happiness today because we are whole leaders and whole people. So my only job now is just to do the thank yous. I want to start off by saying to IWFSA and the leadership, without you, none of this. And I cannot emphasize that enough. I want to say a massive thank you to Standard Bank, not just for the sponsorship of the event, but for the way you've truly journeyed with us to get us here. I cannot tell you the number of nights we've had calls and the meetings and every single thing in between. We are truly grateful. I'd like to acknowledge all our, what I would call our sister organizations, Friends of IWFSA and now Friends of YLC as well. We see you and we thank you for being here. To all the speakers and the panelists, it is not lost on us that you have so many other things competing for your time in your diaries. And yet you chose that on this day, you would come and share this stage with us, Siyabonga. I can't stand here without acknowledging YLC and the ladies that have made today happen. To my sisters, really on on Lerato and I's behalf, Siyabonga. There are people who oftentimes, because they're in the background, get missed. And today we're not going to do that. To the technical team at the back, let's give a round of applause. To the cameramen in the passage. To the photographers outside on the stand. And even in their absence, to the men and ladies who work at JLC, right from the security guards at the gate to reception. Thank you so much. To every single service provider who stepped up for us, including the ones who gave us the beautiful roses today, Nolubi and others, thank you so much. And last but not least, we have media houses, not only today, but throughout this whole week. We were on every single channel in this country. We were broadcasting into the continent. And that's not only because we have a phenomenal PR capability at YLC, but actually because IWFSA, you've given us a story to tell. And we just want to say thank you for letting us tell our story. So to the media houses, for all the interviews and for trusting that what we have to say today is worth listening to, Siyabonga. So tonight, 6 p.m., high heels and lipstick. We are celebrating and we're acknowledging young women who've got their hands rolled up and are doing amazing things. There's only one person that I'll shout out perhaps in person, who's not only been instrumental in getting together today, but tonight as well. Mel, can we ask you to stand, please? You have been absolutely YLC Ideal Summit 2023, hashtag embracing equity. My name is Nozipho Shabalala. What a
Thanks, BT.